Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers
with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family. I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
And we're back for another episode of Box Office Bingers. Matthew, just kick us off. I'm very excited for this week's episode.
Yeah, I know last week we had mentioned that, but then stuff happens, life happens, and so that didn't work out. And then I had a guest in mind, like immediately. I was like, Ernesto, hold on. I got somebody. I got some real quick. And then I texted him. I was like, hey, man, you want to do the show? And he literally was like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, no problem. No worries. I was like, you saw this movie? And he's like, yeah, I saw this movie. He's like, you want to come on? He's like, yeah, I'll come on. I was like, you sure? He's like, yeah. And I was like, cool. And that right there is how that happened. Welcome to the show for the first time. I wanted to make sure everyone got the gist of how this happened. I wanted to be thorough with it. But yeah, welcoming to the show for the first time, TJ Dalisay. How you doing?
Hey, Matt. How are you? Listen, I appreciate you texting me, and right, that conversation was short and sweet, but it was a wonderful Father's Day gift from you to me. So
that was on Father's Day. Did I say?
Yeah,
You said it to him on Father's Day.
You did. He did. He said Happy Father's Day at the very end of that conversation.
At the end of the conversation.
Yes.
Matthew.
He didn't say it at the front end. It was more so, hey, I've got this podcast. Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
There was no context, just do you want to do it? And then I said, yeah, sure. And then he said, have you seen the movie? Yeah. He said, okay. You sure you want to do it?
Sure you want
And then he goes, Happy Father's Day. Thanks, man. So, yeah, thank you, Matt, for the wonderful Father's Day gift. So.
Yeah. So while we're on the topic, speaking of, how is you guys' Father's Day? I'm not a father myself, except for my cat. But other than that, like, how was your Father's Day, Ernesto, TJ?
Yeah, mine actually really relaxing. The kids and the wife surprised me with a nice little brunch. We did a little brunch over at the Evermore Resort. I don't know if you guys have gone out there yet.
No.
There's a restaurant out there, and the wife was able to get some reservations, so we were able to do brunch. Walked around the huge lagoon. So if you've seen it on social media, they've got this like huge man-made blue that kind of is that whole area, and you've got the Conrad Resort itself is out there. And so we just kind of took our time, walked around, enjoyed it with the kids, and then yeah,
mine was great. We went to my father's house, and he's got a new Blackstone, this big huge one, and he's like, he makes like the best fried rice, so he wanted to make us fried rice, so we kind of just went over, and then we all kind of cooked, and he made us his fried rice, and it's like restaurant quality. It's how good it is. It's so good. We kind of just hung out, and just it was a great day with the family, you know.
That's really good to hear, because sometimes that doesn't happen with everybody. So I'm glad to see that you guys had a good time on Father's Day. And I'm about to say, like, I'm pretty sure I did say Happy Father's Day at the end, but I did definitely came in strong. I was like, hey, TJ. Yeah, how you doing? You doing good on this Sunday? This random Sunday?
Great.
Out of nowhere? You're not busy right now, are you? Like on anything in particular? But TJ, him. The reason why we had him on the show, like, we've probably had numerous conversations on multiple fronts, on movies and TV, on Disney in particular, and as well as theme parks. So like this guy, you have 3 kids, and I don't know how, just same as Ernesto.
I have 4.
You come back. Yeah, sorry. You come back and you're like, hey, have you seen this? I'm like no, but how? Where do you find the time? Like, I don't have with TV shows as much as you have consumed. I at this point, you're just like a consumer of content at this point. Like you things you like to watch. And he was also the reason why I got into Shogun. I was gonna watch it. Me, it's like, what do you mean you haven't watched Shogun? Like every week is like, have you started Shogun? It's like, no. It's like, well, why haven't you? You should start it immediately.
How are we supposed to talk about this, Matt, if you haven't seen it? And I wanted to talk about it with you, and you hadn't seen it, and so I was very disappointed. So I had to find other people to talk about Shogun with. So
that's very true.
But no, I think the reason why I consume so much content is because my kids, our youngest is like 2, but collectively between the 3 of them, our world of video on demand. So like Disney Plus is on, Netflix, Paramount, like they are in every streaming platform, and they're constantly consuming content. Because of that, just me sitting around the house, I'm watching this content with them. And I think it's so funny. My kids are so good at also like finding new movie trailers. So they'll be like, Dad, have you seen the movie trailer for this movie? I'm like, no, like, where did you see that? And they're like, find that? on YouTube or even the streaming platforms sometimes show like upcoming movies. And so they're really the ones that are like telling me about stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, let's definitely go see that. So yeah, that's where that kind of stems from. So credit to them.
That's good, hilarious. Well, the movie in question we are reviewing this week is, of course, as those who are watching us on YouTube and or Spotify or wherever you're watching this, Inside Out 2. This movie has pretty much been touted as like, hey, this is going to be Pixar's comeback. And I think we're going to be talking a lot about that as well as the movie later on into the show. But it stars Amy Palmer, Smith, Lewis Black, Tony Hall, who replaced Bill Hader as the voice of Fear, Liza Lapria. You're not going to help me with some of these names, Ernesto. Because I'm going to screw them up every single time, especially the one we have. You know which one I'm talking about. Actually, 2 of them. I might actually toss it to you because I'm going to be confused with these next 2. Liza Lapria, I believe. That's how you say it. I think she's a new like to the scene. She's actually replacing Mindy Kaling, who has the voice of Disgust. You also have Maya Hawke voicing Heidi, Ayo Edebiri. There you go. She has the Bear fame. She's been killing it on the Bear, and she was the voice of Envy, which I'm not going to try to pronounce that name.
Adele Extraopoulos, maybe.
Yep. Yeah, and she played in You,
Ennui.
I believe. Paul Walter Hauser.
Ennui.
There you go. You see, this is why we have you guys here, because I'm gonna like, we have a long show. We're gonna keep doing this. Hauser, who played Embarrassment, which I had no idea. He only had one line in the movie, I believe. And I'm surprised they got like that much of a well-known actor to have one line in the movie, but I guess that's the genius of pick. And then Kensington Tallman, older version of Riley, did not bring back the same actress from the first movie, which I thought was interesting. Written, directed by Kelsey Main, directorial feature film debut, but she's been with Pixar for a while. She was a story supervisor for Monsters University, The Good Dinosaur, and she was the writer director of the Monster University Pixar short Party Central. For those who have watched that, it was also written by Matthew Lefauve, who also wrote Lefauve, not sure. Also wrote Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, and Captain Marvel. And then Dave, who was a staff writer on Weeds and the creator of the Jim Carrey series Kidding, which is kind of the wild card out there. It's like, wow, you did Weeds and then Inside Out 2. That's your main. Like, okay. That's where you're going from. So it's an interesting lineup. I do want to say that, like, even though there's behind the scenes on the first movie and the second movie, before we dive too much into it, I feel like it was able to keep the essence of what Inside Out is, even though a lot of people behind the scenes were not part of the sequel.
I agree.
But yeah, all of that a little bit later into the show. But when we first started, when I was first reaching out to you, TJ, I was like, hey, we typically have the show. We have 3 stages. We either have, we just talk about the show, the movie itself, and that's going to be it. Sometimes we do Whatcha Watchin as well. well as the movie. But there's also the whole version of the show where we talk about entertainment news and then what we've been watching, and then we dive into the movie review. And you said you wanted to be in it for the whole thing. And I commend you for that, because it's going to be a long episode because of it. So thank you for kind of strapping in and enjoying us for this full episode.
Yeah, look, I'm a lot going on recently within the entertainment world, so I'm stoked to kind of.
Very few that come on here take on the full experience. So.
Yes, it's like level 2 or 1 on the front, but you were like, hey, if I'm going to be on this show for the first time, I might as well go full throttle. After that, I never have to show up again, and he can stop asking me to come on the show.
That's right. It was challenge accepted is what came through my mind.
It's really more of an endurance test at the end of the day. It's like, all right, I deal with this guy a lot at work, but like,
that's right.
What about after hours? Let's see how that works. And then
I'm probably gonna have to take a day off because of this now.
Amazing. Hold on. Also, before we get started, is the lights changing?
Yeah.
Like
I put them to change this time. I found a good setting on my light. I was like, "Ooh, this it just goes through a variety of colors, and it just reminds me of the emotions." So that's why I picked it.
Oh, that's amazing. Also, I just turned the corner. I want to just bring this up as well. I have this sitting on my desk. It's always sitting on my desk. I didn't realize until just now that we are actually reviewing a movie that makes sense to all this. But this has been sitting in my desk since the first movie came out, and I find this little thing hilarious. And I feel like this is me if I'm working business class job, and like I'm just always angry. Look, this is a reminder to not work in an office.
Here, also, I'm wearing my Disney Alumni Association shirt because I used to be on the college program.
Wow.
So,
there you go. I'm also sporting a Disney Pixar Live, what's it called?
Symphony?
Symphony of Celebration. Yeah, that was over. I saw this actually at the Dr. Phillips Center where they played Pixar music live, and then they had like an abbreviated version over at Hollywood Studios for a summer, which is where I got the shirt. So yeah, we're sporting all the Disney Pixar stuff, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the film later on with you guys. But before that, we have, as TJ stated, a lot of entertainment news, and I also think this is a good time to mention that we have timestamps in our description. I have a feeling it's going to be a long episode. If you want to skip this or just go right into the movie or what we've been watching, or hey, don't even worry about it, just listen to the whole show. We do have those timestamps for you guys. But anyway, back to the entertainment news. And this one's a pretty big one that we're going to start off with. Excuse me. Sony Pictures Entertainment has acquired Alamo Drafthouse Cinema, the movie theater chain that inspired a passionate following with its creative cocktails, extensive food menu, and strict no talking / no texting policies. Under its new ownership, Alamo Drafthouse CEO Michael Kusterman will remain at the helm of the dine-in movie theater chain and will report to Ravi Ahuja, the president and CEO of the newly formed Sony Pictures Experiences division. The company's 35 cinemas will also continue to be operated by Alamo Drafthouse, and its headquarters will remain in Austin, Texas. Alamo has been quietly soliciting off past several months, but had struggled to find a buyer and was forced to shut down 5 North Texas locations last month. Customers said in a statement, "We are excited to make history with Sony Pictures Entertainment and have found the right home and partner for Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. We were created for film lovers. We were created by film lovers for film lovers. We know how important this is to Sony, and it serves as a further evidence of their commitment to the theatrical experience. Together, we will continue to innovate new opportunities for our teammates and moviegoers alike." So, TJ, I'll toss this over to you. How do you feel about this? I'm not sure if you've ever been to an Alamo Drafthouse, but now it's being owned by Sony Pictures.
Yeah, so I have actually had the pleasure of going to Alamo Drafthouse. About a year, so 2 years ago now, was when we kind of moved back to Florida. We're originally from Florida, but for years prior to that, we actually lived in the Northern Virginia area. So that's actually where there is an Alamo Drafthouse up there. And then they actually opened a second location up in that region, in the DMV region. There's an Alamo Drafthouse as well. And that was actually our spot to go to. Like after that opened up, like that was our go-to movies we wanted to view, because it was just a vibe. Like it was a really good vibe, really good food. The kids loved it, really good seats. And I think they were able to create this nostalgic, classic movie theater environment that brought fun to a lot of the old movies, and then it brought fun to the new movies that were coming out. And so when I first saw this news, I actually had kind of multiple emotions about it, right? No pun intended with Inside Out. But it thought of was like, oh man, like Sony is gonna like this will be something that maybe Sony does like exclusive for Sony Pictures, right? So now all of a sudden you have to go to an Alamo to watch certain things, and maybe that does become the case. But I really feel like what this does do overall, as I thought more about it, is I think it's really good, one, for the movie theater industry. I think an actual film company coming in and purchasing an Alamo Drafthouse, especially because they were going out of business. Like it was very sad to see, like the OG locations, which were in Texas, those locations were the ones that were actually failing. The Northern Virginia one, and I'm not sure if they have other locations outside of those two regions, but it was sad to see that such a great environment for moviegoers was going to go away. And so for Sony to come in, I think it's really going to rejuvenate that brand. And I saw that the CEO of Sony Pictures actually said that they were excited to work with other distributors. So this isn't necessarily this, I think there's this fear that it was going to be kind of a vertical stack, right? There's talk of it being a vertical stack, kind of, back in the 1930s and 40s, we had kind of talked about this. There was essentially a decree that the U.S. government put out there. And what that did was really stop any of the major movie companies from owning their own theaters, because that was pretty much the thing. MGM and some of the other classic production companies who actually not only did they make the films, but then distribute the films. And it was becoming this monopoly in a sense for those theaters and in those film companies. And so the government was like, nope, I don't think this is good. We're going to stop that. And so that's how we kind of got the AMCs of the world, the Regals, and, fears said, hey, this is actually not really relevant anymore because there's lots of options for people to go watch movies. And so they took away that decree, and now we're, I think this is the beginning of reinventing the movie-going experience. I think this is going to be good for that industry, and I'm actually excited to see what Sony can do with it.
You actually you got like a good brief history of what I'm actually going to be diving into shortly here. But you kind of pretty much described basically the whole thing that I'm about to say anyway. But yeah, there was a decree out there that basically prevented movie theaters from owning movie theaters, and therefore they had to like pivot, and then AMC, Regal, and all that stuff was born out of that. But before we dive into that little brief history, Nestor, what do you think of just the initial news of Sony buying out?
I mean, he kind of said everything, but yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. I think this is great. What a great way to bring competition to some of the big box names. And you guys have you have, and our friend Stev, who's a friend of the show, has always talked so highly of Alamo Drafthouse and everything they have to offer. And I'm so intrigued. Like, I definitely I can't wait to go and experience one. I think that'll be fun. So I'm excited to see that it's going to continue, and what will grow from this, and how many others will buy other movie chains that seem to be struggling.
Yeah, and I was actually a little bit sad to see that it was like news first came out that they were closing locations, and I was like, oh, that's not good. Obviously, they were going into bankruptcy, and I was like, I had such a great experience going to that movie theater chain when I went to. I've only been to one, but I that memory holds very true right now. And it was almost a year ago when I first experienced Alamo, and it's like there's so many options here. As says for movie lovers, by movie lovers. And we almost had one here in Orlando, and it's so depressing that the pandemic kind of stopped that. And I was so but yeah, the idea of what that represents, and almost it was going to go away. It feels like he understood that and realized that maybe we need to preserve what this is and maybe enhance it in a way that we don't know. Maybe we actually might get that Orlando location in the future because now they have the funding to back up even more locations, instead of just kind of living in Texas. But kind of what TJ already brought up, and I'm going to go a little bit more in detail of it, is that decree. For anyone who does not know, because I did not know myself, but of a deep dive and like why hasn't movie theaters or movie studios owned movie theaters? Like what happened to that? Because it feels like this is something that should have been happening this whole time, but there's a reason behind it. So enacted in 1948, the United States versus Paramount Pictures Inc.'s case, or the Hollywood antitrust case of 1948, or simply the Paramount Decree, was a landmark United States Supreme Court's antitrust that prevented film production companies from owning exhibition companies and on which theaters would show their movies. It would also change the way Hollywood movies were produced, distributed, and exhibited, and it also opened the door for foreign and independent films to be shown in U.S. theaters. As TJ was mentioning, the movies would make, movie studios would make their movies, and then they would only hold their own movies in certain theaters, almost creating a monopoly, and then the government didn't like that, and so then they put a halt on that, and then that opened the door for, say, like the AMCs, the Cinemarks, the Regals, all the other independent chains out there to kind of shine, and then have to have a different communication, different language, go to change, which is why we even have CinemaCon in the first place, because that's a whole big thing of movie studios going to movie theaters to make sure that they have big movies to show, and it's okay, you're going to make your money somehow, shape, or form. However, the decree only affected some studios. While Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, and MGM were barred from re-entering the theater business, others like Universal, Columbia, and United Artists, which did not own theaters at the time of the decree, were therefore not banned from acquiring them in the future, which is kind of silly in my opinion. Which is why Columbia Pictures, now under the Sony banner, was able to acquire the Lowe's Theater, which is now owned and rebranded into AMC Theaters. And it was also why Disney was permitted to own the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, and Netflix was able to purchase the Egyptian Theater, also a theater that Netflix owns. If you guys don't know about the Egyptian Theater, like I didn't literally 2 weeks ago, then it's a really fascinating story of how there's this really very ancient, historic movie theater in Hollywood that was kind of like in shambles, and it was about to prepare to be demolished, and then it was recognized as a historic to make sure that it wasn't demolished, and Netflix actually bought the property and then rebranded it and rebuilt it to more or less its original form, and now it's a house for them to show their movies that they only have available streaming, as well as just to preserve what the Egyptian represents. Every weekend they show old classic movies there, and then during the week, if I'm not mistaken, they show like their newest film. So right now I went on their website, and they right now are showing Hitman. So you can go to the Egyptian Theater and watch Hitman. The next movie they're going to be showing is Axel F, which is the new Eddie Murphy movie from the Beverly Hills Cop sequel. So like I think they only started doing this past November, because that's when the Egyptian was opened and kind of reformed to what it is today. The first movie you could have watched there was The Killer. I forgot who directed it, but it was Michael Fassbender who starred in it. No. And so, David Lynch? Close. It's somewhere around there. That name, David Lynch. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, Netflix actually put out a 12-minute short. David Fincher, thank you. Netflix actually put out a short film, or like a short, that you can watch them restoring the Egyptian. And now for me, next time I go to California, I really just want to visit it, just go inside and kind of look at it and see what what they've done to the place. And also on a side note, it's kind of a win. They earned the respect in Hollywood. where their headquarters are at the moment. Also, they make movies and entertainment business. And so them restoring a historical landmark and a movie theater was just a good. It also bypasses the Oscar route where the movies have to premiere in theaters. And guess what? It's in one of those major cities, and Netflix can just premiere one of their movies in that theater with no problem. So it was a win-win for them. As also, again, with TJ, firm for more than 70 years until 2019, where upon review of its ongoing decrees, the Department of Justice issued a 2-year sunsetting notice for the Paramount decree in August of 2020, believing the antitrust restriction was no longer necessary as the old model could never be recreated in contemporary settings. Until just now, when Sony bought Alamo Drafthouse, and it's just the beginning, because then they're just going to go off and own all the markets from here on out. But yeah, so if you didn't know, that's kind of the brief history of like why movie studios have not been owning movie theaters this whole time. So. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to hear about this history happening. Like, it was happening very slowly, but now who knows? Maybe Universal might be going into buying their own movie theater chains. TJ, do you think this could be the ripple effect of movie studios now looking to venture into buying more movie theaters?
Yeah, I think this is just the start, right? I think it does multiple things. I think one, I think what makes the likes of like Alamo Drafthouse work is that they bring an experience, modern day audience, of rewatching classic films and getting the same experience that our grandparents had when they went to go watch that film, right? A movie from the 70s or 80s, or it could be classics from 30s, 40s. But we get to relive what them to the movie theater watching that film. And I think Sony coming in, I think one, just like you said, it's going to bring in, and I imagine you're going to start seeing more locations pop up. Like, I don't think it does them good to have limited locations. I think you would want spread throughout the United States or even internationally, where, if they wanted to do an exclusive showing for a Sony picture film, or, if Universal's in this, or, they can create that experience for you to have to go to that theater to watch that. And with that, I think it is the experience. So now I'm excited to see, okay, like what can Sony add to that experience for a specific Sony Pictures film? Like, what is it? What's the ad? What's the for me to specifically go to that theater to see that film? Because if it's just to see that film, I think at some point it's the intrigue is going to die, right? So they've got to come up with some way to enhance that experience. It's like, what is it that makes it so exclusive? I think it's similar to how Disney Plus, and some of these other streaming services tried to do to pay to watch the movie, right? So not only did we have like a monthly subscription, but then all of a sudden, at the beginning of all of this, they had certain movies that you actually had to pay for to actually view. And I think for these companies, if they go into this realm of purchasing theaters, they've got to get it right off the bat, and they've got to create experiences. And so I think Sony will do justice, and I'm excited to see what that might be. What does that look like that enhances the movie-going experience beyond just having food brought to you, at your seat and lush chairs? Like, what's that added thing that they're?
Why should I see Spider-Verse there as opposed to going to see AMC?
Right. Yep. Right. And there's also that element of like, now for the movie studios, you actually now have a designated venues for, say, like movie premieres. I know Disney has been doing movie premieres for years, Butan Theater in Hollywood, rather than going to, say, the theater across the street, which is a Chinese theater, and doing it over there. I'm sure they've been doing it both, but like, you have your own venue that you can do then to have that unique experience that you can only get by watching a Disney movie, for example. Or now at the Egyptian, you can do that and have a red carpet premiere for those who are going to watch the newest Netflix movie, and you can actually watch that. And I feel like, at least for Netflix, that's such, for people who live out in Hollywood, that's a great way to be like, hey, this decent quality, and I would love to have seen it in a theater rather than watching it at home. I know that they did that with Zack Snyder movie, which is very high production value, and like, yeah, why not see it in the theater if you have the option to?
Yeah, because it's especially for the Netflix theaters, it gives them an opportunity to actually showcase the movie the way it was intended to be viewed, right? Like that's our thing with like our smart TVs. These TVs we have features that's filmmaker mode, right? But now that, especially for a studio like Netflix, who has always been is producing these high quality films, now they have a venue to actually present it to an audience in its truest form of how it should be actually viewed.
Yeah, how many times are they? They're now going to be able to highlight movies that were just stuck on streaming. Like, what if a movie that didn't do well that will now do better because it's being viewed in that enclosed format the way it was meant to be seen.
Yeah.
Because some movies that are great in the theaters, when you watch at home, just really don't hit the same. Like I remember loving this movie. Why can I not? Like, why is it not as good? And it's sometimes the experience makes the movie.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, all these bells and whistles we can have at our home, bigger screen, better speed, create the movie theater experience, just not having to leave our home for it. So, but yeah, I think this is very interesting all around. I think, TJ, I agree with you. I think this is just the start of it with Sony buying Alamo. I'm hoping that Sony can stay true to its word of actually upholding the Alamo Drafthouse like mantra. And it says they're just now, they're just putting the money down to make sure that these theaters are alive, and hopefully it can actually grow as a business into a larger of the United States and maybe even internationally going forward. But yeah, I think hopefully this might reignite people going to the theater, because I know that's a big contention of like people are just not doing it anymore, and the reason why maybe Alamo Drafthouse wasn't sustaining its business and almost going into bankruptcy. So a lot of interesting stuff coming out of here for sure. But also, speaking of experiences that we've been moving on to our next story, has announced that it plans to open massive entertainment and dining shopping complexes called Netflix houses. 2 major cities slated to open in 2025. Ernesto, we actually had brought this conversation up a while ago that Netflix was looking into bringing these certain live experiences tailored to their franchises into a setting some sort, and it looks like we are now hearing the first of this, and I'm pretty sure we had talked about this like maybe a year or two ago. But the Netflix houses will feature its eateries and experimental activities tied to the Netflix's major franchises like Bridgerton, Stranger Things, and Squid Game. The 2 locations will occupy former department store locations at the King of Perugia near Philadelphia and the Galleria in Dallas, Texas, each spanning footprints of more than 100,000 square feet. The Netflix houses locations will build upon previous pop-up live experiences the company has staged along with its Netflix Bite stands, and it is designed to create an unforgettable venue to explore your favorite Netflix stories and characters beyond the screen. So I'll start with you with this one. I know, again, we briefly talked about this when they first kind of made the announcement, or like rumblings of this may happening. Is this like a draw for you to go to Philadelphia or go to Texas to visit one of these Netflix?
Oh, absolutely. I already texted Evan. I said next time we go to Texas, we're going to have to make a trip to Dallas. I'm just curious. I'm just so intrigued on what everything it would entail. What I would imagine, I don't know if Matt, if you remember, Disney Springs, aka what was it? I don't even remember what it used to be called.
Is it? Oh, Downtown Disney.
Downtown
is what it
Disney.
Was.
That the store, the Virgin Record store. That's what it kind of reminds me of. It's like, I remember they had a whole section, and they always had stuff connected to the movies that were coming out, and like whether it be books or just other kind of merchandise. And like, how many times now people are looking for Stranger Things stuff online? Well, now they have a place where like the official merch will be, like things directly connected to these massive franchises. All the Bridgerton books will probably be in there. You know, it just really I mean, it's everything people will be looking for that's tied to that. Like, you know, the records for Bridgerton, you know, the vinyls and all that stuff. Like, I think this is going to be great. I think this is fantastic. You know, I mean, especially tied to, you know, the previous story with the theaters. I think all these things where these streamers are reaching out and these production companies into the physical world and finding a way to merchandise themselves. It doesn't seem like, to me, this doesn't seem gimmicky. This seems like a genuine way to connect with viewers and to bring an enjoyable experience where people can come and shop and buy stuff about the shows and movies that they love.
TJ, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, this is Netflix doing what they've already been doing. Now they're just consolidating it to like a central location. You know, Netflix has been so good with all of their different IPs and the content that they're putting out. With doing pop-ups, you know, pop-ups and experiences. Like, they were already doing these things, and so for them to actually in the Netflix house, I think is great. I think this is an opportunity for them to showcase their popular that makes Netflix what it is. And then I think what it does is it creates that whole experience around it, right? This is not showing the movies there, but this is a way for them to experience those movies or shows that everyone loves. I think it's interesting. I'd be curious, like, why the two locations, like why the random location in Pennsylvania, maybe like based on their streaming numbers, there's like a heavy set of region.
Sure.
But yeah, I think this is a good thing. I think Netflix has always been good at branding and creating experiences, creating pop-ups. Merchandise is a big thing for Netflix. And I think creating kind of a central location where they can house all this. And I think this might even be a way for them to kind of be able to certain content. You know, they could put something in there, see how it does. But yeah, I think this is a good thing. I think just like the Sony purchasing Alamo, I think is something that some of the other studios might look to and you know, say, hey, maybe we create some type of experience for our audience.
You know, what would be? Go ahead.
Well, if you think, go ahead.
No, what I was gonna say is like how they're buying out these department stores. What if we see this? This is how they bring the malls back. You know, because you know, like. Because each little studio buys a little store, and then the mall becomes becomes like a streamer's experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, when you go to a plaza and you're like, well, I'm here for other stores I can also visit aside from public. But if you think about it, like, if you think about it, this has been going on, you know, the Netflix house. It seems like this seems a little random that they're opening up these stores in these random locations in Pennsylvania and Texas. And but then again, if you think about it, it's like, well, Disney and Universal has dominated theme parks centered around immersive experiences to capitalize on the movies that they've been making for many years. So just short of Netflix just opening up a theme park
I'm sure that's down the line.
Rides, I know. I'm sure it is, because now at this point Netflix has created itself with so many iconic franchises now. I mean, Bridgerton, Stranger Things, Squid Game, just to name a few that they've listed on the a bunch more that they could easily create a theme park around their franchises. And who doesn't want to go through an attraction?
Who doesn't want to ride? Who doesn't want to ride a Stranger Things roller coaster? Don't you want to ride a Demogorgon?
You can literally go to the Upside Down. If you ride that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure they've had multiple like kids. I mean, that they can have this little kids area, the horror area, thrillers, adventures, all that stuff. There's so many of them that so you can have a whole mystery area with Knives Out. It's great.
It's only a matter of time.
But like, it's only a matter of time. Yeah, but I think this is Netflix kind of getting more on these live experiences, similar to what TJ was saying about these pop-ups were already a thing. This is just the next step for Netflix. I feel like just give it a matter of time, and if these are successful, we either get more locations around the country. I can name a few malls that are dying here in Orlando that Netflix house would
like
fit
any
great
mall in America.
Pretty and much. There's also like any.
They're all
really.
going down little by little.
Well, it's crazy because when I said 2 locations, my first I was like, all right, Hollywood, New York, done and done. And then they're like, nope, no, we got Pennsylvania and Texas.
Like, all right.
All right. Nice. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing that they're doing. I'm really excited for it. I feel like if I'm in the close vicinity of this area, then I'll definitely make a trip out there. I don't know if I would make a sole trip, but if we're close by, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go see this Netflix house.
Like I'll wait till I'm already going to Texas to go see it.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, this is nothing short of what Disney and Universal has been doing for years. So I think this is just the next step in that. It's like we don't have enough money, or we're not choosing to spend money on a theme park just yet. But just because what kind of experiences are they talking about? Like, aside from just selling merch, what else? Like meet and greets?
No, but
Can we meet
you
a
could do. But you could do
like,
live events for different shows. What if you do like a Bridgerton meetup? Everybody. And the only reason I keep bringing that up is because me and my wife just watched.
There you go.
So it's like you could have a meetup. Everybody dress up and whatever. I mean, who knows? You could have little mini conferences that there's so much that they can do. It's limitless.
That's very true.
Yeah, like is this like a Netflix con? Like, can they turn you into right? Like you essentially house a con just for all of their properties, right? I mean, the thing that I thought of when I saw that, I was like, oh, food.
That too.
Like there's got to be like, within the different movies and shows, like this is a great opportunity for them to like expand and really like bring you into those things.
And also like as we already know, Netflix has been partnering up with Universal and Halloween Horror Nights to give us these experiences under Stranger Things and Haunting of Hill House for years, and coming out with theme merchandise and foods and stuff like that centered around their brand. So now they're like, okay, we can do this on our own now because we know people will come and visit these locations.
Let's stop giving Universal our money. Let's make our own.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not. I think we can do this on our own now.
I think we have enough smart people and enough money to make this happen.
And whether you hate him or not, you hate him, like him, whatever. Netflix is still dominating on the streaming game. Like if a movie hits on Netflix, or if a show is on Netflix, it brings in like this reigniting of a franchise. Kind of case in point with Suits. People lost their minds over Suits when it hit Netflix. It's like all of a sudden, like Suits was the brand new show that already had 9 seasons out that people recently discovering. There were other shows like Cobra Kai that was failing on YouTube TV when that was a thing. You put it on Netflix and boom. You was another great example. That was on
Lifetime.
Where was that? That was it was somewhere else, and then they picked up the first season, and then all of a sudden, they have the power to hit the masses to make it a popular thing, and so they definitely, coming up to this Netflix house, there's a lot of value in those houses. So it's a theme park. I'm just waiting for it.
We always complain about the Netflix prices until they come out with like a banger of a movie or a banger of a show.
Yeah.
It's like all right, like. Yeah. I guess it's worth it this month.
I guess I don't have to eat this week. I guess it's worth.
Guess it's ramen.
It's worth the $50 I pay for Netflix. Am I overpaying? Is that too much? I gotta talk to somebody.
That might be a little much. All right, moving on. We're excited. Great things are coming. I'm very excited for this next piece of news. Lionsgate has unveiled plans for a new Hunger Games movie titled The Hunger Games: Sunshine on the Reaping, based on Suzanne Collins' new novel, which was announced on the same day. The book will be released March 18, 2025, followed by the movie adaptation on November 20th, 2026. The story will revisit the world of Panem 24 years before the events of the Hunger Games and 40 years after the Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, and will start on the morning of the reaping of the 50th Hunger Games, also known as the Second Quarter Quell, and the games won by Hamish Abernathy. Francis Lawrence, Catching Fire, Mockingjay, and Songbird and Snakes, is also in talks to once again direct. I think this is amazing. I mean, those of you who know the story, like this Quarter Quell actually had double the amount of tributes, so instead of it having 24, there's 48. So I'm expecting like a massive massacre of what's to come. This is also, we get to see Hamish's story. I don't necessarily need Woody Harrelson in this movie, but I need a voiceover to at least start the movie. Just give me like one line. I just need to hear his voice. I just need to know that he's there, whether in the beginning or I guess they could do it in the end, like how they did for Ballad of the Songbird and Snakes, when you get the voiceover at the end of the movie. I'm very excited to read this book. Matt knows I'm a huge Hunger Games fan. Out of all like those dystopian future YA novels, this one is my favorite. Like I've read all 3 books and I've read Songbird of Snakes. Songbird of Snakes is probably one of my top 10 favorite books. So I'm just really excited for what she brings to read this book and then to once again watch the movie following. And this is just fantastic news. I don't even care who they attach. Like I'm on board. Like I'm just gonna go ahead and buy my tickets now.
It's kind of crazy to think that. Oh, go ahead, TJ.
No, I was just gonna say I think what I like about this is they're bringing back the team that actually, the director who did the original, because I think the prequel that just came out, like it didn't have the same feeling to me. Like it was still good. It just didn't have that. It didn't have that same through line. Like it wasn't the story. It just didn't feel the same to me. And I thought it was still good, but I like that they're bringing back, especially for a character like Hamish. Yeah. Like he's such a strong, vital character throughout the story, right? And now we get to learn what made him him. Like what, you kind of learn it in the movies, but now we get to see like, okay, what was that journey for him that got him to that point? And I think it's good that the original director is coming back to do that. So
yeah. I also I know Ernest was a huge fan of the Hunger Games, and we had Hannah on the show when we talked about the Songbirds and Snakes, and you guys were doing a lot of, I was kind of just taking a backseat on that episode because you guys were like doing book comparisons, going back and forth on like, oh, this would happen in the book and this would happen in the movie, and I was like, I can tell you about the movie and go right ahead.
But that's what was great is that how different the books and the movie. There was no way that the movie could encapsulate like how. Just what the book was trying to put out. They did the best that they could with the story they were given. So I like the movie, but the book is like, that's like the common saying, like it's always better. But the book is like 100 times better than the movie.
Yeah, I find it interesting that this time around, it's like it almost like Suzanne Collins was literally working with Lionsgate or giving Lionsgate the heads up is like. Or like, I'm really curious what came first in the scenario. Was it Lionsgate? Like, hey, do you have any more ideas? Hunger Games is like really popular for us right now. We would love to bring out new content. Like, what do you got? Or was it Suzanne Collins be like, hey, I'm working on new material. I'm just giving you guys the heads up. And Lionsgate, like, we're going to jump on this real quickly. We put out all the other 4 movies. We want to continue doing work with you. And then when you had this announcement, I originally saw like, oh, she's making a new book. That's cool. And then, and then it was like, oh, damn. Maybe an hour later, it was like Lionsgate's like, and we got the movie for you right here, guys. And don't you worry about it. We got this. And I think that's like a really cool kind of an announcement to make simultaneously. It's like, hey, I'm making this new book. It's coming out in 2025. And then don't you worry, readers. You have a year and a half to catch up on the book because then the movie's coming out in November. November worked out great for Lionsgate when they did Songbirds and Snakes. So I feel like this feels very collaborative in a way. So I wonder if like she's going to be writing anything to maybe influence how the movie's going to turn out. Is she going to be having, I know she's always had a hand in the movies, but is it more so now that like the movie is 100% happening like with the release of the book? So I'm curious to see how that kind of all plays out.
I would say my perception, just based on reading all her books and seeing all the movies correlating with those books, like it seems like she writes her story and then they make a movie version of the book. But it seemed like she might be, maybe it's in consideration, but they do seem like two separate entities. If that makes
right.
And
sure.
and I don't remember if for the last one, if was the book and then the movie announced simultaneously. See,
no, it was the book was out for a while, and then later, like Lionsgate said, we're gonna.
But the book, but when it came out, it had already been doing well. So I wonder if they're just jumping on it because, hey, the last one did well, the movie did well. There's no reason we shouldn't just jump on, like you said, just jump on this from the get and just go ahead and just lock that in now because it's gonna happen.
Why not? And I'm sure, like as you are, just like, yeah, there's a fan base out there. They're hungry for more content, and and so like this seems like a good idea to kind of go off of. And like this is, I really, just to be honest, probably never gonna read the books unless I'm really influenced to.
Don't worry.
Ernesto got that covered. But I just think like obviously there's a fan base out there, and so Lionsgate and Suzanne Collins, like if there's more ideas in my head, why not put it out there for everyone to enjoy? So I think this is just a very interesting announcement that both of them are kind of doing, and so it's something we don't see often of like books and movies kind of working together to give us different versions of a product.
Yeah, we're going to be following this news. I'll be excited to see what casting news comes out of this. I'm sure we're not going to hear anything until after the novel drops because,
Sure, yeah.
Or unless they're, a year and a half, about a year and a half between the book and the movie. It's like the book's got to drop and then they've got to like already be starting at least have started on the script. It doesn't leave some time, but not really a whole lot of time to kind of get this thing up and running by that November date.
Yeah, but they're still giving it its time though. We're still 2.5 years away from even seeing this movie. True. So they have plenty of time to make this movie for sure. So obviously Francis, what was his name? Francis Lawrence has been with the franchise for years since the second film. So it makes sense for him to just keep. Hey, you know the drill. Just keep doing what you're doing.
I'm sure he's got Suzanne on speed dial, so I'm sure she's writing and he's bringing her coffee.
Yeah. Anything you need. Anything you need.
Oh, you're writing that chapter? Let me go ahead and just write that scene while you're.
Yeah. This makes sense. Did I spell that correctly? Okay. There we go.
So moving on, some other news. Spaceball sequel is in development at Amazon MGM Studios. Josh Gad is set to star and co-write the film as well as produce alongside Mel Brooks, Josh Greenbaum, the director behind 2023 Strays, and Barb and star Goda Vista Del Mar, starring Kristen Wiig will direct the film. Sorry, screenwriting duo Benji Samit and Dan Hernandez, best known for writing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, Pokemon Detective Pikachu, and Addams Family 2 will also co-write the screenplay. The only reason I kind of oofed a little bit because I saw Strays and it was just, that was just not a good movie. Like no way, shape, or form was that a good movie. I'm mixed on this news because I love the original Spaceballs, but the thing I love the most about the original Spaceballs is Rick Moranis. And unless Rick Moranis is coming back, I don't know if I necessarily want this. But, I'll see it regardless just because I love the original and I would want to see where they took this iconic classic. I like Josh Gad. He's fine. Just, if we're going to do it, Rick Moranis needs to be a part of it.
TJ, I know you're a fan of the franchise, or the film as well.
Yeah, I think this could be good. I think, what made the original, of course, the influence of Mel Brooks, right? Like that, just everything he does. But you're absolutely right, Ernesto. Rick
Moranis. Rick Moranis. He did carry that film, right? And I think as a sequel, it's going to be interesting to see how they carry that same type of comedy, right? Because I don't know if Josh Gad has that same type of comedy, but I also think because of
Josh Gad is now doing Broadway. I think this could be a good match because Spaceballs, because of the Mel Brooks, it is Broadway. Like the way the films are, it is a good mesh of Broadway and filmmaking. And so I think Josh Gad can bring that to this film. I'm just curious if he can bring that same type of comedy. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that with Josh's Gad involvement, this is just me assuming here that he would play the John Candy role in the first movie. That just seemed like that would be more his comedic style. Maybe they're going in a different way. Maybe he might be replacing the Rick Moranis role as well. Because if you remember, I think this project kind of fell through, but Josh Gad was going to be in a rebooted either series or movie or sequel to the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids franchise, in which Rick Moranis was going to return back to acting to play the role that he played in that film, and then Josh Gad was going to be his son. So I think that kind of fell through because we haven't heard anything about it since its announcement. So I don't know if he's had some, maybe a lot of conversations with Rick Moranis or if that project ever came to fruition. Obviously it didn't, but like those connections that he made, and then obviously going into with Mel Brooks, if they found something that they can tap into. And also Mel Brooks had a pretty good success when they did the Hulu series History of the World Part 2. So I think there's some value into bringing his style of comedy back into a sequel of Spaceballs because he just did it at Hulu. I don't know if Josh Gad was involved because I know there was a series of shorts that was. But also I will say that Josh Gad is just signed on to direct a Chris Farley biopic. So obviously he's kind of tapping into the old school comedy, so he could have a lot to bring into when it's movie. And then of course we have the idea of a spoof movie in general, whether or not it still plays in today's society as well as it did back when these movies were funny and popular. We just recently, not too long ago, remember Ernesto, we talked about they're doing another Scary Movie film, and we're like, I don't know if that's gonna translate well today. It depends how they do it, and I feel like to this same point, it really depends how they do it. Obviously Spaceballs was a spoof off of Star Wars, so do you stay on with that, or do you do more of a sci-fi in general spoofing, or is it going to act as its own and it's more of a comedy?
I think there's plenty of content now within the Star Wars universe to actually spoof. So
yes.
There's a lot of avenues for them to go down to actually spoof things. So
I don't know, maybe. And Mel Brooks is attached, so it's
yes.
It does have hope, but I think that what would make it better is having Rick Moranis involved. So not that he's listening to the show, but Rick, we want you on. We want you to come back for Spaceballs. Don't just do Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Go back to all your classic roles.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I'm just gonna go back and look real quick, but I doubt that project is still happening. It's been years ago. Hell, even Josh Gad was set to reprise his role as LeFou in a Beauty and the Beast spin-off with Gaston and all that, and that never happened.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like if Rick Moranis was going to come back for any role, maybe this might be the one if he does. And if he does come back, then I feel like that this movie has a lot of all right, well, wait a minute, hold up, we got to check this out. But a lot of intrigue here for sure on what this can turn out to be. Also, just in spoofs in general, I don't know if they can still be made as funny as they did back then.
It's a different
just
time.
Given our climate.
Yeah, it's
a different time. But I do feel like that it can, if done well, you can maybe bring these back and actually have really funny material to go off of movies that we all enjoy.
Yeah, it would be nice to see a resurgence of comedy in that Mel Brooks style of comedy. But we'll see. We'll see what comes of this. I'm hopeful, but we shall see.
Yes.
So moving on, and some not so hopeful news. Filmmaker Jan Dimanche, from Lovecraft Country, is no longer set to direct Marvel Studios' upcoming film Blade. This is the second director to leave the project since writer-director Bassam Tariq exited the project back in 2022. Blade has long been in development since its announcement at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019, where it was announced that Mahershala Ali will be starring as Blade. Insiders say Dimanche departed the film amicably weeks ago, as development on the project has stretched over multiple years. Screenwriter Eric Pearson, Thor Ragnarok, Black Widow, and upcoming Thunderbolts film, would now be writing the screenplay after at least 5 other writers have taken passes on this film. What was really funny is that Mahershala Ali's lawyer commented on it. He said her quote was, "The deal was in 2019 and they still haven't shot it," which is pretty much the craziest thing in my professional experience. And I would agree. Like, why are we making all this other shit? Like, let's get Blade off the ground. Like, Kevin Feige get in the room and said, all right, what do we need to do to make this movie happen? Or just take it off of the slate. If y'all are not ready to do it, take it off the slate, save it for our next phase. We got a little soft tease at the end of Eternals. Like, if it doesn't fit in the story now, then don't force Blade in now. And we've heard how many different after that Variety article came out, there's just so many. We got to hear so many misturns of where that script has gone and how many different iterations, and it's just sad because, I was really looking forward to this. I love Mahershala Ali. I hope that this doesn't cause him to leave the project entirely. I'm not sure what his contract is, but I mean, we're coming up on 5 years and they haven't even finished writing the movie. Like, what is happening? Like, they should have been talking about him making the second one by now.
Yeah, seriously. And I know that we had talked about Mahershala Ali, like he was when the first pass around, he was unhappy with the script. There were issues, and literally 2 weeks before filming, they dropped it, and then that's when the first director, kind of left the project. And then it took him a minute to find this new director, and now he's gone. I don't know what's going on there. I'm going through 5 different writers, and now kind of Marvel relying on Eric Pearson, who's been working with Marvel as a writer for quite some time now on a couple of those multiple projects, is I guess for him it's a safe bet to know what the Marvel formula is to give us maybe something that Mahershala Ali and Kevin Feige is looking for at this point. But I really hope they don't lose Mahershala Ali because of all the setbacks. And at this point, I agree with you, Ernesto. At this point, it feels like that we just want a movie out, and I feel like that's not going to create the best product. And I really hope that they can kind of nail this. And I also think I saw I think Wesley Snipes made a comment of I forgot what the comment was, but I think he was just basically bragging. It's well, it ain't easy to be this good, or more along the lines that he was saying. But I don't know where you are, TJ, in the Marvel universe, how you feel about what's been going on with Blade.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate part that was it did start off on the wrong foot because it was attached to the Eternals at the very end, right? So you've got that kind of, so it didn't start off well. It started off great for us because we saw the tease, but to be attached to that specific franchise within the Marvel universe, I think that was a bad start. I think given the time that has passed already, I'm hopeful that this is actually going to become something. I think Marvel's in a really weird time right now where they're really, they are doubling down on what they know is successful. Kind of the Disney mentality right now, right? We're not going to do anything original. We're going to do sequels. The big thing for Marvel right now is Deadpool and Wolverine. So it's a very weird space for them to, as well loved as Blade is, to come out with a movie for a new character within the universe. I just don't think that Marvel is in a place right now to actually kick that off. So,
I mean, clearly, because they can't even get the writers and the directors locked down to even do that. It's kind of sad because there's a fan base there. When Mahershala Ali was announced back in 2019 that he was going to be starring as Blade, we were all cheering. It was like, yes, let's go, let's do this, and let's make it happen. And but there's also, through all the the troubles they might have in the production, maybe some something good can come out of this. Maybe they were never the right people to be directing the movie. Maybe those weren't never the right writers to be attached to the project. Maybe with Marvel's restructure, they're finally getting their footing and given the attention it needs to make it what it needs to be. But yeah, leading up to it, it doesn't sound like it's promising. But Marvel has proven us wrong before, of like, hey, we were making a lot of questionable things here, but then turned out to this be an amazing film. I see Guardians as an example of that. It's one of their best franchises they've ever produced. So it's a gamble, but also Marvel has not been hitting it lately in their films anyway. So the fact that they can't even make this work, at the very least, at least we know that this wasn't out and it was bad. We just know that the behind the scenes have been troubling. So I guess time will tell. We'll come back again when they come out with a new director, I guess. Yeah. And I'm sure
we'll see what happens if and when this movie will ever be made.
I feel like you almost have to put Blade in another movie, like have him show up, you know, and get the audience acquainted to him, and then you can give us the origin story, right? And then you put out the movie that is just all about Blade. But I think within the Marvel equation, I think you almost have to throw him into one of the movies, let him be a part of the universe, and then give us the standalone film.
I agree.
Honestly, I mean, that's a really good idea, because that worked out. It worked out very well for Black Panther when he was first introduced in Civil War, and then he got his own movie going off of that, and that movie made $1 billion off of another $1 billion movie. So like, yeah, I think there's a lot of weight to that. And I know they've done that with a bunch of other characters as well, where they've introduced them in a movie and then now they have their own spinoff in one way, shape, or form. I think that's also helped at the time, like Wanda and Loki, to be featured in other people's movies. And then when they came out with their own show, there's enough of familiarity with those characters to then like warrant like a successful show to come out of it. So I think I really think to your point, just to keep Mahershala Ali in the game. You got to bring him into the MCU somehow. You got to feature him on it. Let's Deadpool. If it's not too late for reshoots, let's get him in there real quick.
just one scene. Guys. That's all we need.
One scene. Just him just killing some vampires, and then Deadpool's like, I can help or not. I don't know. Or just looking at the camera, it's like, we did it, guys, and then just moving on with the rest of the story.
What I think they should do, and I think would be like a funny nod to the Blade story, is if he's going through different universes and they come up on like the original Blade failed script, and like maybe Mahershala Ali is like talking shit about it, and then Deadpool's like, yeah, fuck that, we're not making this movie. Like, I don't know, something like that. That would be cool.
I would think it would be even crazy if we see Wesley Snipes.
That would be hilarious.
On a side note, what I love about the Deadpool and Wolverine marketing so far, among other things that's been going on, but the amount of footage that I've seen around this movie is very minimal. Every time I see like a new trailer about it, or like it catches my eye, it's always seems to be surrounding around what looks like to be the same few scenes. Yeah. The backgrounds looks very similar. I think they're doing the Avengers Endgame approach, where they're not showing you any new footage past maybe the first 20 minutes of that movie. Good. And that is it. And I love that, because it preserves what seems to be a lot of the great stuff that might be at this movie. So when we see it, it's like, oh, only the first 20 to 30 minutes is familiar. The rest of it is just this eye candy for the fans to come out of it. So I think Deadpool and Wolverine and Marvel have been really doing a good job in the marketing of this movie. And as I said from the beginning, I'm this is my most anticipated movie of the year. So this is Marvel's comeback. If this does not work, they really need to reevaluate everything that they've been doing. Otherwise, it's just not. Marvel's just going to continue going downhill from here.
Yeah. If Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't work, it's going to be like the nail in the coffin. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be a struggle.
It's like if you can't get Ryan Reynolds, who basically is Deadpool, to bring back your franchise, then your franchise is done.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. What do you call himself? Marvel Genius?
Marvel Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah, so we just need that to happen. But anyway, so hopefully Blade can get it together. But moving on to our next story, And kind of following the Disney news train, $7 Productions, the film and TV content label, founded by Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia, has signed a first-look deal with the Walt Disney Company to develop films for theatrical and streaming. The projects will be possible vehicles for Johnson to star in, and interestingly, the deal is not strictly limited to film content. While details weren't immediately disclosed, Variety has learned the multiple-year agreement also will give $7 a chance to collaborate across all Disney divisions, like its theme parks, merchandising, and sports outlets. In 2012, $7 Productions enjoyed a long-standing relationship with Disney, producing films like The Jungle Cruise and the upcoming live-action Moana film set to hit theaters in 2026. Even on top of that, Johnson has been with Disney for quite some time, even doing the game plan and the animated Moana film and its sequel that comes out later this year. So in hindsight, this feels like this is like it will work well together, but at the same time, Dwayne Johnson is Dwayne Johnson. So,
has his hands in every business.
Yeah, he really does. Where do you feel about Dwayne Johnson now almost officially joining the Disney family, as he maybe tried to do once with, we saw how that worked out with DC and Warner Brothers. And now he's in bed with Disney. So, how do you feel like this goes in for Disney? TJ, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so this is the equivalent to me as a football franchise signing their star quarterback to kind of a long-term deal, right? This is we already have Dwayne Johnson in a lot of things Disney-wise, right? Mm-hmm. We already associate The Rock with Disney. Mm-hmm. He is Disney, and so it just makes sense that you kind of lock him up, or vice versa, he locks into Disney for his future films or shows, or he, just like you said, Ernesto, so he has his hands in a lot of things. He is an entrepreneur, and I think this is just the next step for him to kind of solidify his spot in the Walt Disney Company. As to we're just going to see him in even more things. There's probably going to be a category on Disney Plus that's just Dwayne Johnson.
Johnson Universe.
That's right.
Next thing you know, we're going to see an animatronic of him in the Jungle Cruise attraction.
I'm sure they're already building it.
I'm sure. But I find it interesting that it says that it can go into more than just films. So just what does that mean? I think the article was poking fun of can you get a Johnson Dole Whip at the park or something? Can you see his was it Under Armour? He has some sort of branding deal
is it under
something along those lines?
I think it's Under Armour, where he has his own shoes. He has his own clothing line. He's got it all.
Yeah, exactly. That we can maybe see presented in the park somewhere, or have the Disney label backing it, or having a partnership between the article of clothing and Disney.
Mickey Mouse wearing his clothes. I guess he's wearing his shoes.
Mickey Mouse wearing his clothes.
You're going to see a video of him lifting weights with Mickey Mouse in the gym.
We're just going to see, it'll just be a jacked Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I guarantee you, there's going to be at least one shirt where he's got the Project Rock, the cut sleeve shirt that he wears, and him with the chains and him working out with Mickey. There's got to be at least one. But I think you're right. I think them expanding it past media is opening that avenue to make the Jungle Cruise the Rock ride. You're gonna tell me, out of everything the Rock has, that he doesn't want to be on a ride at Disney? I'm sure that he wants I'm sure he wants his body sculpted there for all time.
And also, not only with the Jungle Cruise, but I think he has a better chance with Moana than he does with the Jungle Cruise, to be honest with you.
Well, that's his voice. You'll get his voice and his likeness, but if you put his animatronic in the Jungle Cruise, it will literally be him.
Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting move. I think to your point, TJ, he's been working with Disney for quite some time now, so it only makes sense. Actually, he also did I think he did a 3-picture deal with Disney earlier in his career. It was The Game Plan, The Tooth Fairy, and The Race to Witch Mountain. Right. And he also did a couple appearances on the Disney Channel shows that were there at the time. And this was when he was starting out. It was he did The Scorpion King, and then he went on to do these family friendly movies And then after Rampage, the Fast franchise, like then he cemented himself as like this hardcore like action star that kind of went off from that. So, and then he tried to take a stab at DC and Warner Brothers, and then James Gunn was like, "Nope, we don't need any of that. You can get out of our business."
I am the new face of the DCEU. You're actually the end of the original DCEU, so no.
A new hierarchy has begun over. Yeah, ending with you. The hierarchy was that you sat down and then James Gunn took your seat.
It's like you sat down and said, "Oh, fuck this shit. We got to start over." Said, "I am Black Adam." No, you're not.
No, you're not. No. It was a good thought, though.
Yeah,
it was a nice thought.
You tried. And you tried. Hold on. I mean, just how long did they petition that movie? How long? It was like 10 years that movie was in development. That's going to be Blade all over again. I'm telling you, it's going to be like Phase 8. It's like Blade is still in development.
I think this is also Dwayne Johnson to be like, I gotta get a resurgence back from that Warner Brothers. I gotta get something else, and who's bigger than that than Disney?
Yeah.
And so who knows what might come out of this, but it would be interesting to see what comes out. At least I'm curious to see what his next project is that isn't a Jungle Cruise sequel or a Moana film. But it does seem like that he's tied up with Disney anyway for a minute. So I guess it only makes sense for $7 to be incorporated in that deal as well.
Well, like I'm curious to see, because this is a first look deal, right? So this is them presenting to Disney and Disney saying, okay, yeah, we do want to do that, or we don't. So what comes out of them after this that Disney doesn't attach themselves to? That's what I'm curious.
Ooh, that's a good
point.
Right,
yeah, that's a good point.
Because he also
probably some of their more,
because he also has a good deal relationship with Netflix with some of the other like that Christmas movie. Isn't that coming out this year? Or did it already come out?
No, that's actually with Amazon. That's an Amazon deal.
Is that him and Chris Evans, right?
Yeah, and J.K. Simmons.
That's right. Or the red one, or the red one, the red one.
That's
right.
what it's called. Yeah,
that was a big Netflix movie. I mean, we'll see.
Well, so the Red Notice was the big Netflix movie with Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot, and then not to be mistaken with the movie he's coming out, the Christmas movies that he's coming out this winter. That's on Amazon called The Red One, which I believe either he's Santa or J.K. Simmons is like a Jack Santa, something along those lines. That is very interesting when that comes out. That's what it was.
Maybe he just really likes. Maybe he just really likes the color red. I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows?
I'm done now.
For all we know. And the last piece of news, as we kind of go down a plethora of news that's going down, this one was for you, TJ. That's why I included it in here. Ronald D. Moore, the creator behind Battlestar Galactica, Outlander, and For All Mankind, has returned to Sony Pictures Television, signing a multi-year overall deal to produce scripted series for cable and streaming platforms. After a successful 10-year run, Moore had originally left Sony in 2020 and had signed a deal with Disney under 20th Television to develop multiple shows that ultimately never came to fruition. Those projects included a Swiss Family Robinson reboot series for Disney+, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers set in the Magic Kingdom universe for Disney+, and a Court of Thorns and Roses adaptation for Hulu. Again, all of which never happened, which is crazy that you get such like this mega producer who's come out with multiple successes on a TV series, like Battlestar and Outlander and For All Mankind is doing very well over at Apple. And then Disney has a chance. They got him. Like Disney got him 4 years ago, and then nothing came out of that. And then now he's re-signing a deal with Sony to create more projects, whatever he feels that he wants to do. So, like, as a Disney fan, TJ, how do you feel that those projects that he was working on just never happened?
I'm glad that they didn't happen, because I don't think they were a good match to begin with. I don't think him pairing with those projects would have actually turned out well. But I love, see, this is the thing. I love his other projects. Like For All Mankind, I think is one of the best Apple TV series. I thought it was really well done. Especially he does sci-fi really well. And I just don't think, especially Swiss Family Robinson, I just don't think he would have done well with that. And so yeah, I think this is a good pairing for Sony, especially within the sci-fi realm. I think this is, I think he'll be able to do what he actually wants to do and what he actually wants to work on. I had a feeling that the projects with Disney wasn't necessarily him. I think they were trying to Disney was trying to pair what they thought was success to some projects they wanted to see become successful, but I just didn't think the pairing was necessarily a good match creatively.
Do you believe that, especially talking about the Magic Kingdom universe, that I feel like that they've been in development hell for years? I know that Jon Favreau was attached to do a Magic Kingdom film years ago. Yes. And it could still be in development. Kevin Smith was attached to be a showrunner for a Kingdom Keepers series, and then that ended up not happening. And so now we have this Ronald D. Moore, that I think this was the reason why Kevin Smith did not continue his project, because we got Ronald D. Moore, where he's going to work on a society, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, set in a Magic Kingdom universe that was supposed to expand all of this and have a connective tissue and all that stuff that, again, never came to fruition. So do you feel like this is just like a dying project that Disney has been trying for years and is just not able to work out? Do you feel like they should even try to continue working out, or they should just should they continue to try, or they should just drop it?
Yeah, I think they need to put it on the back burner. I don't think they should drop it totally, but I think that the fact that Jon Favreau couldn't do anything with it, that speaks a lot to me, because I think Jon Favreau is he is Disney. He is the kind of bloodstream for the Marvel Universe and Disney. It was really interesting. I saw how many years has it been since Iron Man came out?
2008.
2008. So
20.
Is that 12, 14, 16 years?
What are we? Right. So they did a Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. did a sit down. I saw it on YouTube, and they talked about kind of the Iron Man movies and all in all the Marvel universe. And I didn't realize at the time how integral Jon Favreau really was, not only with the Iron Man movies, but then for the whole Marvel universe as a whole. He was really the one that kept pushing those projects forward. Even behind the scenes, even if you didn't know he was attached to it, he was really the driving force that kind of kept the what made Marvel with the Avengers what it was. It was because of Jon Favreau. And then obviously we've seen everything he's done within the Star Wars universe of Mandalorian and what he's done there. And I just think something with the Magic Kingdom, with that project, I think Jon Favreau would have been a good match. I just think at this time, it's probably the Disney mentality right now. I just think they need to put on hold any of these new projects and just kind of get back to what made Disney Disney. And honestly, we'll talk about this, when we talk about Inside Out too, but as well with Pixar, getting back to what made Pixar. But yeah, to answer you, I just think if Favreau and some of the other people who are already within Disney couldn't make something out of it, I just think they need to put it on the back burner.
Mm-hmm. It's also crazy to think that they probably spent a lot of money on locking down Ronald D. Moore to even come on to Disney. Like I said, he had a successful 10-year run with Sony. Why would he ever leave? Yep. And I'm sure Disney probably proposed him with a very attractive deal to leave what he already had and all the success he was having over there, and then to come on and to create these projects. And for Disney to spend all that money and ultimately have nothing to show for it, I think that's another a thing that we might be seeing in the future of okay, who are you partnering with? Are you making more safe bets than taking more gambles? I'm sure this deal was made right before the pandemic started or right after it started, and I'm sure that didn't help with it either. Of we were trying to pushing all this content out because that's where everyone was consuming it on the streaming service age, where the streaming services are not financial if we keep putting out money into it. We have to restructure. We have to start doing ads. We have to start doing this. And I'm sure some of the projects that were not streamlined were kind of taking a backseat, and Roger Moore was like, well, why the hell am I sitting here? And I'm going to leave and do some other stuff that he wanted to do. So crazy interesting. A lot of interesting stories we have this week. A lot of behind the scenes, a lot of creators moving here or there, and so that's the entertainment news we have for you guys this week. As always, you can go to our social media channels on Facebook and Threads at Box Office Bingers, and our Instagram page at Box Office_Bingers for all the latest news over there. We're going to post it over there first, and then we'll come back in the show and we'll talk about it. So with that, we're going to be moving on to a fun segment we like to call Whatcha Watchin. And so, TJ, we're going to be starting with you. What have you been watching?
Yeah, so on my list of things I've been watching, so just right off the bat, I have been watching Dark Matter. So that's top of my list. I think, it's so funny because I am very against shows that don't allow me to binge it all in one sitting. And it was the same way with Shogun. Like, I wanted to all when I first saw it. I was like, give me all this content now. But Dark Matter is definitely a show that it intrigued me from the beginning, and I've kept up with it. And I feel like the story, it does a really good job. So it's because we just got episode 8, I think, this past week. Mm-hmm. The first 6 episodes, it started off, it's just, for those of you who haven't seen Dark Matter, it's a sci-fi. It brings in the multiverse, kind of, I don't want to say time traveling, but it really centers around this character Jason, who is a scientist, and the theory that all of our choices have essentially within the multiverse, all of our decisions and choices create a different timeline, right? Like, this is something we learned with Loki and within the MCU, and he's found a way to kind of harness that and be able to travel to those different universes, and he's able to use his mind in order to get there. And it started off very sci-fi heavy, and it's like great, and then it kind of I would say like episodes 4 and 5 kind of dialed back the sci-fi, and it was like, okay, here's like the drama part of it, which I found really good. Like, a lot of sci-fi shows just lays on the sci-fi, and so this actually dialed it back, and I felt like, okay, maybe we're going to come to an end here pretty soon. And then I would say episode 7, and especially episode 8, this last episode that we got, really gave us another plot twist, and it kind of ramped up the sci-fi portion of it once again. And so I love that they kind of did that, like, so far within this season, where they've kind of slowed it down and then they kind of ramp back up. Has been good viewing for me. Second on my list, my wife and I have been watching Bridgerton, as maybe a lot of people have on Netflix. It's really good. Like, I don't know how to say it. Like, Bridgerton, there's a lot of things about it that one, it's easy for both my wife and I to sit down and watch. Like, it's something that we're both into, whereas some of the other stuff, she's not into the other stuff I'm watching. So this is a great opportunity for us to kind of sit and watch a show together. I feel like the characters are really strong. It keeps you on the edge of your seat every episode, even as we progress through the seasons. And then, of course, even the spinoff where we learned the story of the Queen. I mean, it all has been really well done, and we've been pleased with this new season 3, and so very happy with that. That's kind of been on our list. And then to wrap up my list of what I'm watching is Monsters at Work. That one's with the kids. We've already seen all of the episodes, but my kids love going back to it, and I think it's just a fun, kind of easy show to sit down and watch, and I love that you're able to kind of go into the monster world and kind of see, there was so much more from the movies that you could have gone into, and I think this is that kind of avenue for them to kind of go into that world and really show you a lot more that you didn't see within the movies. So those are my top 3. Dark Matter, definitely great. But yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go back a little bit to
Yeah, go ahead.
to some of these things. So first, I just want to briefly talk about Dark Matter. I know you've been talking
go
about it for a while, and this is one of the other shows where you're like, "Hey, you watching Dark Matter?" I'm like, "No, not yet." It's like, "All right, well then, screw you then." And so like this has been on my radar because like you honestly you are the only person that I know that's actually watching this, you and Adam, and so I was like, "Oh, then I feel like I'm going to start this soon because multiverse, that's my jam. I like what they've been doing with over at Marvel and Loki and all that stuff. So like, and also if it can be an opportunity to be very meta about it, then that's also my jam as well. I don't know if it goes into it. Don't tell me. But either way, I like everything you've talked about with Dark Matter. And so that definitely hit my interest. And especially, it's a hard sell for me, especially with Apple TV Plus, because they have a lot of deep sci-fi shows on there. I know there's For All Mankind, there was Silo, there was like The Foundation, there was the one about the alien invasion. There's now this one. I think it was actually called Invasion. Like, there's so many deep sci-fi shows I consider deep sci-fi that's like, it gives me the same tone, the same mood. Do I really want to dive into that world and like be this dystopian, futuristic, like it sets a tone, and I feel like I have to be in the mood to watch that, so I don't typically gravitate toward those. Like I haven't seen any of the shows I just listed, but you did have my intrigue with this one, so I feel like with the finale wrapping up here soon, I'm just looking up it's 9, is it 8? Hold on, it's 9 episodes. It's 9 episodes total. The episode 8 just dropped today as we are recording, and then episode 9 is next week. So the fact that we're very close to the finale seems for me like a good time to hop on, and then by next week I should have been caught up. If I'm able to binge it, I'll be caught up and then watch all of it in one sitting. Not one sitting, but like within the next couple of days, where I don't have to wait like you've been waiting week to week.
Unfortunately, I've had to wait week to week to see what's going to happen next. But just like I said, like what really got me, because the whole theory behind the multiverse, like everyone's doing it, everyone is kind of playing off the same theme, and they're doing it kind of the same way. This one kind of it does add a new perspective to the multiverse, so it kept me interested in it rather than the whole timeline theory and hopping timeline. Like this actually keeps it does something that we've seen already in kind of a new perspective. So I think you will definitely enjoy it. It brings a good mix of sci-fi, drama. This is the main character, Jason. He's really an average guy. I say average guy, but he's the super smart guy who's a scientist.
Your typical dude just going through the multiverse. That's all. But
he plays off this as this average guy, and I think it does who's the guy who plays him? Jason
Joel Egerton.
Joel. Yep. He's a really, really good actor in this. I think he really carries this show in particular. And of course, Jennifer Connelly is in it. This has definitely been, I didn't steer you wrong with Shogun. I'm hoping I don't steer you wrong with this one. So
it's very true. And I know, like, even speaking to Ernesto, he's been pressuring me for years to watch Succession, and I have yet to do so. I finally got there with Barry. I know, I'm sorry. I finally got there with Barry, though. That was like, there were 2 shows that he was like pushing for me to watch. It was Barry and Succession. So I got through one of them. Succession, I just got to sit down.
I have yet to steer you wrong. But I understand you're waiting to watch it because you know that it's a pay attention show. So you got to sit down. You got to pay attention the whole hour. You got to put your phone down, put on Do Not Disturb, and just lock yourself in.
Yeah, exactly. But now just moving on to Bridgerton, I know Ernesto, I believe this was also on your Whatcha Watchin. Like, do you agree with TJ, what he's been saying about the latest season?
See, I think that the wife and I think we enjoy different aspects of it. Something that I really enjoy about Bridgerton is their take on their classical music. They take contemporary songs and they they make it classical, and I just find it really interesting. I think that they're really well done. Like out of everything, like I find myself, I've downloaded like a couple of the playlists from the songs just because, like, damn, I like that song, and I just think like, why is it so much better to have played on a violin? Like, I don't know. it just is. Like, and I find myself like where she's like really enthralled in the love story, and like it's good. The writing is good. The character development is good. I really like the way that they ended this season. I think they're setting up for some really good storytelling for the next season. So there's something to enjoy for everybody, and the rewatchability is definitely there because we finished it and now we're actually watching through Queen Charlotte for the first time because we didn't watch it when it dropped. And then I'm going to bed the other night and I'm looking and she's on like season 2. I was like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm rewatching the series again. It's like, oh, okay. Like, you watching it without me? She's like, yeah, I really want to. I gotta rewatch it. So obviously to that demographic, it is extremely enjoyable, like on a level that maybe we don't even that as men we don't understand. But I like that there's something there for both of us. So now we have a show for sure that we will both watch and enjoy. She doesn't have to force me to watch it. So I mean, for Shonda Rhimes, this is a win. And obviously they have many more seasons. There are a lot of Bridgerton children, so there's going to be many more seasons.
Yep.
Yeah,
Look,
also, I'm sure
who
there's so many
doesn't?
books.
Look, this is the thing. Who doesn't enjoy learning the tea from the latest edition of Lady Whistledown? So, you know.
And Lady Danbury is such a badass. She's got that cane. She's got that pimp walk. Like, she's just such a. She's my favorite. She's a bad. Matt, have you watched?
I like I said, like I watched the first season when it first dropped and it was very popular. It was the show to talk about. It was brand new. And I remember enjoying the first season. I really liked the characters we were following. And then after that, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, and it was my opinion where I was like, there's no way it can get better than this. Knowing that the fact that we are not going to be following these characters again because we're moving on to the next sibling. And so I was like, I really enjoyed what I got from the first season. I also enjoyed the music for what it was. And I guess either it just for me is not a show that I would go out of my way to go watch. Is more of a I and Megan show to watch, and Megan wasn't the first thing she wanted to start. Like, hey, Bridgerton season 2 came out. She's like, yeah, but we can watch something else. I was like, all right, like I'm not gonna force you to watch Bridgerton. That ain't me. So like if she ever wants to go down that avenue to rewatch, so like, hey, where do you want to start Bridgerton again? It's like, all right, well then I'm all for it because I like what I got from the first season. But it's not a show that I'm going to go out of my way to watch by myself. It's like, whenever you're ready, we can start this. And right now we have 2 seasons and a spinoff to catch up on if we ever decide to go back to it. So for whatever reason, Megan has not been interested in like going down this avenue. And I also just read that it could be another few years before we get another season from Bridgerton. So I guess there's time to catch up within the next couple of years if we want to go down that avenue. But either way, we've been watching other stuff that I'll get into later since Megan has been home, and now it's a lot of like us shows that we've been catching up on. And Bridgerton was
one other thing I will say about Bridgerton. I just think it's you mentioned like so many characters. What I think is interesting is how well they're able to handle such a large ensemble and still manage to make you care about all the different characters and what they're going through. I don't ever find myself feeling lost in like, who's this person? Why do I care about them? The narrative is weaved so seamlessly that it doesn't seem like they're throwing a lot at you at once, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the last show that you brought up, TJ, was Monsters at Work, and I had watched the first season, and when it first came out, and I was very, very excited about this show, ultimately to realize like, oh, this show is meant for children, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we've had this conversation many times on the show where there are shows that are meant for families that even adults can get into, and then there are shows meant for children. And I feel like at the end of the day, Monsters at Work leads into the children's side of things, and that's perfectly fine for what it is. But I remember really looking forward to the series because this was a great premise to go off of a person graduating from a monster, I should say, graduating from Monster University to start scaring people on literally the first day of work, they switched over to laughter. That is such a great premise to go off of merging between university and Inc. into this show. And how do you move on from that? And I thought the first season for me had just a lot of filler into it, a lot of hijinks, less about the story of what the premise was. And we got there from time to time, but like at the end of the day, it's just like, we really didn't. We were really just having fun and not really focusing on this linear story, which is perfectly fine for a kids program. So I don't know if season 2 continue what season 1 did, or did it kind of maybe meld into more for families?
Yeah, no, this is definitely a kids show. This is one of those. This is one of those shows that we're gonna get like 7 or 8 seasons of, and it's just there's gonna be no like throughput of storyline. Like they're just gonna be these episodes of moments that happen within that world. But you know, like I said, my kids thoroughly enjoy it. They love it. It gives them, just like you said, it gives them that glimpse into the monsters world, right? That you didn't necessarily get to see within the movies. And so, yeah, this is just another kind of staple kids Disney series that we'll kind of have for the next several years that will keep going.
Do you think that we can actually get a sequel? It's been a long time. I know we're going to be talking about this a little bit more, but like Pixar has had a great success financially with Inside Out 2, and as well as his other sequels that has taken its time to brew for a while, and then all of a sudden we get a sequel to like Incredibles, for example, and then like it just blows up and it's great. So now it's been over 10 years since we got a sequel from Monsters Inc. You know, we had, I think it was Monsters Inc. in 2002 or 2003, and then Monsters University was in like 2013. So now we're even 10 years after that. Do you think this is now a good time for a sequel, or do you think Pixar and Disney might be leaning into like this avenue to continue the franchise?
No, I think this is a great opportunity to create a sequel. I think the less live action movies they do, the more opportunities they have for these types of films. But yeah, no, I think this is definitely a franchise. You know, you see it within the parks, and that's really the thing. The franchises that you see within the Disney parks, those are the franchises that they're going to double down on. And I think they have an opportunity here. Just like I said, it's been 10 plus years, right, since we've had a Monsters film. I think if they play it the same way they did with Cars, right, when Cars 3 came out, I think this is a good opportunity for them to kind of bring back this franchise and kind of create some new life into it.
Yeah, especially since Billy Crystal and John Goodman are still lending their voices for the animated series.
Yep.
I'm sure they will do the same if they ever decide to do a sequel to the movie. But Ernesto, what have you been watching?
All right, so I don't have much since we kind of already talked about Bridgerton. I'm going to talk. I have one on my own, and then Matt, the other one I think you and I share. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is House of the Dragon premiere this weekend. Whew. Have Matt, I know you've watched. TJ, have you watched the first season of House of Dragon, or have you seen the premiere?
I've seen a little bit of the first season. I kind of stopped watching. That was just it didn't keep me going. I think it was so different for me than kind of the originals that I'll probably go back at some point and watch it through. But yeah, at the time that I watched it, it didn't intrigue me enough.
Personally, I think it is well worth anybody's time. This is just like expert writing, amazing storytelling. The visuals are there, the cinematography's there, and like this season is just it's just almost like Game of Thrones back to its original true form. Like at the height of Game of Thrones, that's what we're seeing on this season, at least what I think is to come for this season of House of Dragon. Matt and I, he didn't get a chance to watch this week, but moving forward, we're gonna kind of do a week to week recap, like a quick couple minute recap on that week's episode during our Whatcha Watchin. So I'm kind of looking forward to this journey, and Matt, I can't wait to talk to you about this first season. The premiere for the second season.
Yeah, I know that when Well, me and Game of Thrones have a very interesting history. Just more or less is like I watched all 8. How many seasons were there? 7 seasons total. So the first 6 seasons I watched in 3 months. I had watched Game of Thrones season 1 when it came out, and then I went to a season 2 premiere party, and then after that I never watched Game of Thrones again. Because I feel like I wasn't into it, and then it was actually a friend of the show, Chris Nielsen, who was like, "You really gotta get on this as the final season's about to drop." And I was like, "All right, I'll actually sit down." And he actually rewatched it all with me, kind of like give me some insights, this and that. And I watched all of the seasons leading up to the finale, the final season, in about 3 months. And then so my investment to Game of Thrones was roughly about 4 months worth of my life, and that was about it, rather than years like other people have. And then I just binged the first season when it all dropped. So like I'm more of a binger with the Game of Thrones House of Dragon franchise. But Ernesto asked if I'm willing to watch this week to week to have a discussion on a very popular show, and I said let's do it. So now starting next week we're going to be talking about episode 1 and 2 in a little bit more detail. And so I'm curious now how I would feel going into this franchise on a week-to-week basis rather than a just full binge mode with it. So,
well, I can't wait. I think this will be the first time we've reviewed other shows before, but I think this is the first time we've committed to a week-to-week recap.
Well, I would say for the both of us, because I know we've played around with this idea before with other shows, and it just never happened that way. We get busy, stuff like that. But we're giving this another go of actually doing a week-to-week review on our episode with Westworld, and it didn't land.
No, it was it wasn't Westworld. Watchmen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that too. That also didn't happen.
I got a good feeling about this one, though.
I agree with you. I think it's with those HBO shows.
I know they're just so damn good.
But yeah.
But other than that, Matt, this is one that we share. I didn't get to finish the series. I'm most of the way through, and that's on Disney Plus. It's Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I was pleasantly surprised. I really thought that this series, I thought it was really well done. I thought it was intriguing. The action is there. The story is very interesting. And talking to Elizabeth, who's a friend of the show, her interpretation as somebody who's a very avid reader of these books says that the show stays very true to what happens in the books. So going into it, not have reading the books, I think the show's enjoyable. There's some really good moments just in the couple episodes that I've seen. Yeah, I'm excited because I do believe it got renewed for a second season, or
it did. Yeah, it did.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Matt, what is your take on it?
Yeah, so we had Liz was going to be on the show for this episode, and we know that she's a big fan, and she was constantly talking about the series. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to come on. But just talking about it, I'm going to be honest with you, I had to power through this series. After about halfway through, I was like, I really don't care anymore, and I'm just watching it because I said I would watch it. And then when I finished it, it was the same conversation that it was like, this is meant for children, at least in my opinion, and there wasn't a lot that I can latch on to. That I felt like the acting was a little stiff, especially the first 2 episodes. As I finished it, I think it definitely ends better than it started. I don't know if this is a show that I would immediately go back into for a season 2. I think I expected a more mature viewing of this, and even family to teen level is where I expected, and I do feel like that's some of the problems and issues that they had in the series was resolved with a snap of a finger. And it was like, oh my God, Medusa, she's formidable, all this stuff. And 2 seconds later, all right, we took care of that, moving on. And I was like, really though? You were really nervous about this, for 2 episodes now. And then all of a sudden we just took care of that like it was no one's business. And I just like the nature of the show where I feel like we were presented with these big problems that were resolved very quickly with very much ease. And even as we go down into no way that this kid can take on these big, powerful gods like it's no one's business. And with the power of will, we can get it done. And I'm like, no, that's a lie. That's not how this works. I need some struggle here, man. Come on.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I felt about it. I am curious to hear your thoughts once you finish it. But this is just a show that I just couldn't connect with. And I really liked the movies. And I feel like this is like an IP and a brand that I really think I can enjoy because of how it follows Greek mythology. But like in this setting, and I think it might need some time to brew. So like maybe as the actors and the kid actors grow with the show, if it's given the opportunity to grow with the show, maybe it can mature into something that I can maybe enjoy more than I did with the first season. TJ, I don't know if you ever dived into the show or not.
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I have seen quite a bit of it. My kids, just like you said, it is a kids series.
Yes.
My kids do enjoy it. I think you have to view it separately from the movie. I think this is like you said, it is made for TV. Like that's what this series really is. It's a made for TV. This is a Disney series. I think it as a standalone, if you separate it from the movies, I think it does well. I think it has solid story. I don't think it's that bad. And I think it does what I think it was intended to do. So.
Yeah, and it did very well for Disney Plus. So like, there's no brainer that I was getting a season 2.
I mean, compared to some of their other Disney Plus shows that they've been putting out, what was the one that we started, and then I think like an episode and a half in, I was like, I can't even watch this. It was the National Treasure one. We watched.
Yes.
We watched like an episode and a half of that, and I was like, yeah, it's good. And, man, I was like, I don't know how much more of this shit I could watch. and this was like compared to that, like I was expecting like. That's what I was expecting. So I was expecting to not like it, but to come in and I was like, oh, it was just refreshingly different. But yes, I do agree. I mean, it's a show made for children.
What's funny about National Treasure, and I feel like the reason why it didn't work, was because that the tone and who are you making this for was not clear at all. They were like the first episode, they were like, did you just sleep with this person? And then they would like go about it in a way where they're like cursing, but not absolutely, like not going full on, like using the big boy curse words. But they're like, it was in a weird like tone of like we're appeasing to kids and like 20 somethings. But I'm not kids, teens and 20 somethings. But for whatever reason, it just didn't land. It felt very much like an ABC show, like it was meant to be on cable. And so much so that at the very end of the credits, it said it was by ABC Studios. So it was a cable show that was on streaming that didn't know who the audience was for, except for me, who likes National Treasure and like going into like what is it called? What are those movies called? Like treasure hunting movies, whatever those are. Adventure films. And it's like, I like that's me in Tomb Raider, that's me in Uncharted, like me in the first 2 National Treasure movies. Like this is it. But also in the show itself, it's like, yeah, there was a couple rough parts in there. Definitely didn't land. But it's a National Treasure in the title, so it has to be something, right?
Whoa, wait. Did you like Uncharted?
The movie was fine. I'm more of the video games. I was
okay. I was gonna say if you liked the movie, I was gonna that's a different story.
Yeah, the movie. I mean, actually, funny enough, they just confirmed that is getting a sequel. I think it was rumored or like in development for a minute, but Sony did say that they are developing a sequel with Tom Holland leading as Nathan Drake again. So that is happening.
I don't remember if I actually liked that movie. I don't remember. I would actually have to listen to our review to remember my thoughts, but that's how forgettable it was.
And funny enough, that was 2 years ago, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So we have a lot in between those 2 years to just forget about that movie altogether. I remember it being fine. I actually watched it twice, once in the theaters and then once at home.
I do remember that.
It was fine. It was a fine adaptation, nowhere near the movies. I still think that Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg is an interesting pairing. For that, going under a young audience, like a younger version of the character. But anyway, we'll see how they do in the sequel. But yeah, the National Treasure didn't really work. I would have much preferred them just commit to a National Treasures 3. And I think the only person who doesn't want that is Disney, because I know Jerry Bruckheimer's on board, Nicolas Cage is on board. Like, everything is like, we're ready to go for a third film. And Disney's like, I don't know, that series didn't really work out too well. So, but yeah, anyway. Is that all you've been watching?
That is all I've been watching, sir.
All right, so I've also just have two things. Like I said, Megan's in town, so we've been able to watch some Us shows, and we were able to binge through the entire third season of Abbott Elementary, and it's a show that we both really enjoyed, and it kind of gives you the same vibe that the other seasons have given us so far. I think it just does the mockumentary style very well, very humorous under the school setting, and this year. Janine, who's played by Quinta Brunson and also the creator of the show, we get a lot of episodes in this season, her going into the school district and kind of seeing that in a comedic sense of like how things that you want to have to happen in a school, like how does that happen? And then obviously it has to go through the district and all the planning and this and that. And like it was very fun to see her go through in like a temp position working with the district and like just getting things passed in order for it to get approved to be better. But then if you don't have that work out, or you have to go through even more hoops in order to get things done and get grants and all that stuff. And so it's kind of cool to see that be explored within this. And it's just funny all around. Like it doesn't take its foot off the gas when it comes to the comedy. So the season just ended, and it was also in a shortened season because of the writer's strike, and so they were able to give us a really good solid 14 episodes, and the finale ends with I wouldn't say much of a cliffhanger like the other seasons have, but it was very satisfying where they ended off, and I'm looking forward to the new season, which I know ABC is probably going to continue to renew this show until Brunson decides that it's over.
Yeah.
So I think as far as reiterations are concerned with like the mockumentary styles like we've seen with The Office and Parks and Rec, just like that works well in a comedy setting. So can't speak any higher praise about it. We watch this show with so ease. Like it's so good to watch, so funny. Also like Tyreek, they keep bringing him back in weird ways, and it's always fun to just see him, and his like comedic timing is just brilliant. So a lot of fun watching this show. And the other show that we actually just finished binging last night was Hack Season 3. It stars Gene Smart. Let me pull this up real quick. It stars Gene Smart. I mean, it's been killing in the Emmy circuit, and she won an Emmy for its first season. Yeah, Gene Smart, who plays Deborah Vance. And this season is another great season out of Hacks. Like I said, we waited until the season was over and we just binged all through 9 episodes. What's funny enough that's very similar to Ted Lasso is that they originally had a season planned out, and then there was one episode that just felt off. And like most HBO shows, they have of every episode, and they were saying at the end of this like Forest episode that they did, it's like, oh yeah, this is the one that we were supposed to have 8 seasons, but then we pitched to the network or pitched to HBO that we want to do another one to explore more of their characters, of Deborah and Ava's characters, and they said it was okay for it. And it was definitely a show that just felt like really random. Like it definitely was like, here's a line and then went up off that line and back into it. Like definitely like a little skew on the plot line. But I will say though, like where it ended was so good that I was very happy to hear that they got renewed for a 4th season, because like as much as the behind the scenes had talked about, they kind of like here's how this thing happened, and this is where we're leaving off for the season going into next season. But then they talked about how this moment was built up throughout the 3 seasons, and they were playing clips from season 1 and season 2 and season 3 of dialogue that was said in situations that was happening. So then when you get to this final moment in the finale of season 3, it all feels earned and justified. And I couldn't agree more, because even Megan and I at the end of it, like we're like, oh shit, that was really good. And then them explaining it kind of just feels like justification. Like, wow, the writing and the creating team really took their time with this show to give us a nice, well-rounded arc for these characters, and then continue to create drama on top of that. So if you guys haven't started Hacks, I know Ernesto has watched the first 2 seasons. I don't know if TJ, if you've seen Hacks or not.
I haven't seen it. It's on my list of shows that I'm gonna get to.
Yeah.
So it's good hearing from you that it's actually worth it. So
it really is, and it kind of just falls in line of easy watching comedy series that if you just want something to just kind of just sit back and relax, as we say, just kind of turn off your brain in a way, then this is a good show to watch as opposed to say Dark Matter, which a brain you have to turn on and sit down, phones off, and pay attention to what the story is. This one's a very easygoing watch, and now the sad part is I have to wait another year for it to continue. So it's a good show that we happened upon, and I think the Emmys also ignited my interest into this show, and a great show that Megan and I have been watching. And what's funny enough is that we didn't even start it together. I watched the first season, and I think I was already done with the second season, and the rest of them had already talked about it. And then Megan's like, "Have you seen Hacks?" I'm like, "Have you not been paying attention? Where have you been?" I was like, "Of course I've seen Hacks." She's like, "Oh really? Oh, I just started it, and it's really good." It's like, "I know. I think I told you to go watch." She's like, "Oh, I started it." And then I ended up actually rewatching it with her when she was catching up with the show. So yeah, it's been a good time watching that as well. But there you go. That's all we've been watching, and now it's finally time to dive into our spoiler review. Thank you, TJ, for keeping up with us. Our spoiler review into Inside Out 2, the movie that really needed to work after they've had an interesting run the last few years since Toy Story 4, and its Disney Plus struggles and everything that's been going on. And so now Inside Out is here, and now we go over to you, TJ. What were your thoughts on the film?
Yeah, I thought Inside Out 2 was, just like I said, it is what Pixar needed. And I think what works so well is that they did such a good job of continuing from the first movie. I thought that was when I stepped away from the movie, that was the first thing that came to mind, because I think it's really hard for sequels to continue the same tone between movies. A lot of times they can kind of overdo it. But I've really felt like with Inside Out 2, it carried the same exact tone. It almost felt like you went to commercial and then came back and the movie continued. I honestly felt that. We actually, we saw it Saturday. So what was that? Last Saturday?
4 days ago.
Anyways, yes. The kids actually wanted to watch Inside Out, the first one, the night before. So we knew we were going to go see Inside Out 2, and the kids were like, "Hey, let's go watch it." So watching it the night before and then going to the movie theater, I really felt like I was like, "Oh, I feel like we're just continuing the story." Obviously you have the kind of age gap, right? Riley grows up a little bit, but from a tone standpoint, it was as if they had just stepped right back into the world. It just carried on, and I thought they did a really good job of kind of carrying that through. And even with introducing new characters, you've got the mix of the new emotions now. I feel like they did a really good job of continuing to balance the emotions. No one was overpowering. Joy is still the main character. There was a nice balance between them. The concept that the emotions have to work together was still there. And I loved what I really loved this time around, especially with my kids as they're kind of getting older, is they do such a good job with Inside Out of visually showing you that emotion, visually representing each of the emotions. And it was really great because when we came away from that movie, our daughter, who she's 6 years old, she actually struggles with anxiety. So there's a lot of times where we go into different environments, maybe there's a lot of people or people she doesn't know, and she deals with anxiety. And it wasn't until we came away from Inside Out 2 that she was able to comprehend, oh, that's what anxiety is. She was able to visually see it. And I think Pixar did a really good job of showcasing Riley dealing with anxiety, and then also what's actually happening in her mind. I think the thing that our daughter took away was the moment when anxiety had reached the peak anxiety, and she was doing this Tasmanian devil, like around the control board.
Mm-hmm.
And when Joy finally pushes through that vortex, you see anxiety stuck at the controls, right? So you have this like chaos that's happening around the controls, but anxiety is actually stuck frozen and couldn't get off. And that was a moment for our daughter to realize, like, oh, that's what it does to me. Like, she was visually able to see, like, that's what anxiety is doing to me. And then now we're able to kind of talk through, like, okay, when you have those moments, we can help pull you out of it. And that's what Joy did. Joy helped pull her out of that, right? But yeah, I thought they did a really good job of kind of carrying what made the first one work and not trying too hard to kind of really reinvent the wheel, right? They didn't have to do it. All they had to do was continue that story. I think it even more so with a different director. You know, this was he was one of the producers on this one, and you could still feel his influence. And I think even for Pixar as a whole, I really feel like you know, ever since Lasseter left, they kind of lost their way. You kind of had all of these different people between Doctor and Andrew. Who?
I think Ed Catmull was also one of the producers or the founders of it, and then also, yes, Andrew Stanton as well.
Andrew Stanton. You have a lot of the OGs who, you know, made our favorite Pixar films between Toy Story and all of the original ones, right? And I think they kind of lost their way a little bit. And I know Pete Docter is now he's the chief creative officer of Pixar. I think this film really kind of brings them back to what made things work for them the first time as a whole, like storytelling, characters. I think it just kind of resets Pixar back to, okay, this is who we are. This is what made our films really good. And I think if they carry it to the next set of films that they're planning on coming out with, I think it'll definitely work for them. But yeah, Inside Out 2, I think was a really fun movie to watch, carried the tone of the first one. And it just does a really good job, especially as a dad, it does a really good job of representing the different emotions that kids go through. And now we have conversation starters with them when they do feel those different emotions, and we can tie it back to the film.
Ernesto?
Yeah, I mean, you hit a lot of great points. I mean, this movie was incredible. This was Pixar's back to their true form, like just really good storytelling and finding a way that we articulate on a high level, and they were able to break it down so simply that even my 5-year-old, who I took to go see the movie, was able to comprehend and able to like and understand like what was happening and to carry the plot. And maybe not to that level that your daughter did, but the fact that there was some base level awareness and understanding of what was happening was amazing. I think that it was expertly written. I mean, it was absolutely amazing, just the way they introduced it. Like, just the fact that anxiety was controlling, like, as somebody who's coming into puberty, you are overwhelmed with these emotions, which is literally what happens in the movie. They come just busting shit up, knocking stuff down, and they push on all the other emotions, and they try to suppress them as they try to learn themselves and take over. And like, thinking back when we were teenagers, like, that's what it felt like. You felt all these new things, and you felt like they had to become the important thing, and you had to push away all the other stuff. Anxiety, being at the wheel, trying to be perfect. Like, it just made sense. Like, oh yeah, it would make sense that anxiety would try to take control and try to make everything perfect, and how that worked into her real life. I mean, the concept of enjoying all of yourself. You have to accept the good and the bad, and how that was a main through point where Joy's trying to suppress all the bad emotions, and how that came to a front at the end when you became literally flooded with all the bad emotions coming into your true self as part of the anxiety attack. Like, how all those things correlated and happened. They managed to work it into the story to make it believable to us, to that anxiety attack. Oh yeah, it is. What happens when you have an anxiety attack and you start going within yourself? You're flooded with bad emotions of things that, oh, I'm not good enough. Well, I forgot to do this, and then this happened, and this happened. And just but when you learn to accept all of yourself, that gives you your true sense of self. Like, you shouldn't suppress yourself. Like, the deep dark secret being locked away, all the little things they put in there, the sarcasm and how they wrote in there how sarcasm is a break of consciousness. I thought that was so fun, so smart. Like, and the whole, like, here, let's just talk to them, and they're like, can you help us? Oh, you guys are so great. And just how sometimes it just doesn't even translate, because there is that break in your stream of consciousness, because what you're saying is not actually what you mean. So I mean, it was all those little things like that. I even really liked the little Dora thing that they had in there, and how that came into play later, where you're just Anger just shoves his hand in that thing's mouth, and he's like, he's pulling out. I just thought that was so random. It was funny. I mean, it was a really, really fun movie that had some really, like, it was just very mature for a Pixar movie, but they made it digestible for all ages and enjoyable for all ages. Like, I would 100% go watch this movie again, just because I'm sure that there are things that I missed within the story.
Yeah, I think, TJ, you kind of said it right, where, like, I literally walked out of that movie and thinking, this is the same as the first movie. I also rewatched the first movie the night before, and first of all, just talking about the first Inside Out, it holds so well.
Yep.
The movie came out in 2015. Now we're 9 years later from the original, and I still teared up with the Bing Bong scene of, like, losing that imaginary friend, and I was like, that still hits. Like, I know it. I'm obviously I'm 9 years older than when I first watched it, and yet it still holds true to everything what that movie represents. And so then, even it was just a great, funny ending to the first movie, even if they never made a sequel, was like, oh, there's this new, what's that puberty? What's that button? It's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, we have to worry about that, right? And then that's a great starting point for the sequel, and which we always felt like that's where it should have been going all along. And I think, with the time that we've, a lot of time that has passed, and to get a sequel to this was, I think, also just great timing in and of itself. I think a lot of movies that hold so well do need time for it to sit in order for people who want to see it again. Time is your best friend when it comes to that. Timing and time, it really goes into the hand in hand on, like, here is a franchise, here's a movie that was so incredibly well received and so well done, and everyone's beloved it. It won the Academy Award, and then when you wait so long, you were able to have new generations consume it, and then give that thirst for wanting more from it. And then when we finally get it, to TJ's point, they didn't reinvent the wheel. They gave us the exact same movie, just under different settings. Like, they matured with the story as where it felt like it needed to flow with. But then you also, like, okay, the first movie, Joy, was away from the console and needed to get back. This movie, now more emotions are away from the console and need to get back. It's the same premise, and also, but it works though. It makes sense that in this particular story, sadness, in the first movie, sadness and joy were away from the console and left to, like, what happens when anger, fear, and disgust are the only ones that are left to give you some sort of sense of, any emotion that you have. And now when you take away literally all of those emotions now, and you put in all the new ones that you acquired, how does that translate? And I think what's great about this movie, and what a lot of people can relate about to, specifically with anxiety and her taking the realm. And I think where, like, I never saw her or anxiety as the villain of the story. Some can perceive it that way if you're looking for a black and white scenario. But at the end of the day, as well as all these other emotions, what they're trying to do is help Riley be the person that she needs to be. And I think they did a really good job. But, like, even though anxiety was like the antagonist of the story, she was always trying to help Riley be a better person. And it made sense. It made sense. It's like, oh, well, if I'm worried about Riley's future, So in order to worry about your future, we have to let go of the past, because the past, my friends, they're not going to be with me next year. So why do I got to bother with them? I got to focus on these new cool kids. I got to be part of the team. I got to push myself to be better. And like all these stresses that we have in our lives, it really just kind of simply boils it down to what these emotions have gone into. And I think in other ways we have anxiety and envy really working well together in this scenario of anxiety and jealousy working hand in hand on giving us decisions and pressuring decisions that we make in our lives that, only if we had a little sadness or a little anger, or a little joy that would have helped in those scenarios, that maybe we could have helped with those decisions. But even to Ernesto's point at the very end of the movie, when you have all those bad memories kind of shoved in the back of your mind, and then all of that being flooded in as she's having an anxiety attack, I liked when Riley, during that anxiety attack, when the new version of herself came into play, because anxiety was trying to build a new sense of self. Joy was trying to bring back the old sense of self. But really, because of anxiety and because of joy, and really all of the emotions that come into play, it developed a new sense of self, which was, that you are a good person, but you also make mistakes. And that's what makes you. You learn from those mistakes. If you put them in the back of your mind and you always be happy, you're not going to be able to grow as a person. And I think that's what we kind of saw with the new sense of self, that growing, that of her just becoming an adult. I think her becoming a teenager into the next film was like, everything just made sense about this movie. Like, it just flowed so naturally as the next evolution of where the story needed to be. And I think first and foremost, they really paid attention to that and make sure everything had a reason to be there. And nothing was really left out of, like, nothing wasn't there that didn't need to be there. Maybe with the exception of that little cartoon bit of, like, you have a very funny... I thought honestly, it was very funny just watching it as a fan of animation, of like, okay, we have this Dora-like character, we have this video game character, and we have this dark secret that really had nothing to do with anything of the story, yet it was this, in my opinion, there for comedic effect. And then you also had this weird moment where Anger just literally shoving his hand down that bag to get more dynamite. And it was like, they were really playing off with the idea. It's almost like the emotions of, like, how do you feel like watching an old show, and how, like, when you get older, how you react to those moments to it. Did anyone stay after the credits to see what the big dark secret was?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was she put the rug on.
She burned a hole in a rug.
Yes. Yeah. And so, like, I guess that was, and then the big dark secret just kind of went away after that. And you have Lance with the video game character and that weird moment. And it was, the whole part of that was just very weird to me. Everything else kind of made sense. I also like the brainstorm.
Yes.
That was in there, kind of filtering in all that stuff as well. But yeah, I think the only thing that I will knock this movie down for was that element of surprise. And I feel like this is me nitpicking. If I was going into nitpicking mode, this will be it. Of, like, because I felt like we got the exact same movie as the first movie, then I feel like I was able to quickly recognize and pick up the story beats and kind of where we were going in some degree. Like, I knew by the end of her journey, of Joy's and the other emotions journey, it wasn't exactly where we thought we were trying to achieve. Very similar to the first movie, where, like, you were trying to get away sadness, but really you need to work together to, all emotions need to work together. And so, like, it's not just about having the yellow orbs coming out. It's all about the multicolored orbs. Like, things can be mixed emotions on certain things. It doesn't have to be just very linear. In this particular case, it was more about the newer emotions and, like how are they kind of, you're suppressing your old ones, becoming this new person, and finding this new sense of self with all of these emotions working together. Again, at the end of the movie, they all were able to find a way to work together. And I found it a little bit interesting that, like, toward the end of the movie, we see, like, anxiety, like, in the mom's brain.
Yes.
And, like, we see, oh, there you are, anxiety, like, just coming out of nowhere, as if you were never part of the story to begin with, until like now. And I guess in a way it kind of makes sense that as you get older, maybe anxiety doesn't play a huge part as it used to do as when you were a kid. So you're still just relying on those core emotions that were introduced.
Doesn't
in the
come
first
out
movie.
until you have teenagers. That's what brings your anxiety out. As someone who has a 13-year-old, I can attest to that.
I guess for me, the next step is like with the success, which we'll dive into in a minute, of Inside Out 2. It feels like a no-brainer that they would come out with a third movie to kind of round out a trilogy. But I guess with that, where do you go from here? Like, you introduce new emotions without seeming repetitive. I feel like that, are you just going to bring out more new emotions, or do you leave this as your core now of emotions, and how do you move forward? And for me, naturally, the next step was for me to, like, you skip all the way to when you're graduating high school and the emotions that are filling in of becoming into adulthood. That's where I would take this story. That's, for me, that's a natural fit. But TJ, I'm curious your thoughts on where you feel like, where would you go next with this?
Yeah, I don't think you have to jump that far. I think just there's enough to kind of play off of just being a teenager, because we really didn't see Riley. We're seeing kind of the beginning of Riley becoming a teenager, right? She's going through her preteen phase, but there's so many things you could play off of as a teenager. And I think really you don't necessarily have to introduce new emotions, but you can see how in her mind more things are constructed. So now all of a sudden I could see a scenario where maybe there's more of a city, more of a like bustling, there's just more happening, right? It's evolving into something a little bit more complex, but yeah, I think you just continue the trend of just jumping right back in, moving forward a couple years, and then seeing the complexities that kind of leads to.
Ernesto, what about you? Where do you think the next step is?
Right before she graduates high school, you see her go into adulthood and the new emotion, depression. From going into college. No, I don't know. Or maybe two emotions like anxiety and embarrassment birth depression. Or I don't know. It could be like anything. But I kind of see it going towards maybe entering adulthood, ending the teenage years. So almost like rounding out the first one, where she's going from, dealing with a big life change. Like the third one could be another big life change. Is she going to go off to college? What is that going to look like? What has her high school career been like? I don't know, but they're definitely, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when and where are we coming in her life? Because if you look at Toy Story, before they started to extend it into 4, 5, 6, and maybe it'll be the new Fast franchise where it'll be Toy Story 85 going into space. But that's kind of where the first 3 was like a round out of the original story. So I'm kind of hoping for that same kind of feel where Inside Out, I mean, this one to me is arguably almost better than the first one.
Well, I think to your point, they did offer a lot of new. There's just
so much more
to kind of latched on.
What really, really hits for me during this movie is the whole concept of sense of self and using memories to create your sense of self and to create and then how core beliefs become sense of self. I go, damn, that's genius. Like that alone is, you can go, way expands the universe. That just shows you that what else do they have in there that they haven't capitalized on yet? Because that's something that we didn't even think about in the first one, and it makes so much sense when they introduced it into this one. So what else? So I'm hoping if they were to do a third one, what other level can they bring to us about the complexity of basically like the human mind can they show us?
Yeah. I mean, we got to bring back nostalgia at some point.
That was hilarious. I love that. So true.
That was a really good money bit. That's such a funny bit that they put in there. It's like, oh, I remember. It's like, no.
10 more years.
Not yet.
It's so funny. That was like the reaction of all the emotions. Like, no, you're too early. It's like they themselves are aware that we are like, oh, we know what we have to do. This is way too early to feel nostalgia about things. I love that they brought back the triple.
Oh yes, triple gum,
like the theme song, like triple gum. And then anger is just like, oh, why is this still here? It's like, not that one. It's been like a running bit that they've been really good with. I actually just thought, as if we were just talking about this, thought of another way that they could kind of maybe not, kind of going off of what TJ was saying, of maybe not going as far as graduating high school, but like maybe right in the middle of like in her maybe junior year of high school, we've, progressed a little bit. And what about, Riley going into a relationship and feeling the emotion of love going into that scenario? I feel like that could be an interesting avenue of like a teenager going into a relationship, finding love, discovering love.
Yeah.
Sorry.
First love.
Yeah. And how does that maybe Meltion, how does that correlate with all the other emotions that you've kind of have up there? And kind of maybe go through the breakups and this and that. And I feel like that could be an interesting story that can be explored. And also, again, which I feel like what these movies have done with very well is kind of showcasing children how they are feeling. Like you explained with your daughter, TJ, of like, here's a visual representation of like, how do you feel anxiety, and how does the emotions work in the first movie? And so maybe going down the avenue of having the pressures of graduating high school or having the pressures of going through a first love or first breakup can be explored through this setting.
I like your idea, Matt. I actually really like your idea. I think that, love would be introduced as the new main emotion. You literally just change out joy for the middle and put the love character right there. And then what does that mean? Does love kick out the other emotions like we go in the first two, or they do something different? Like how does love affect all the other emotions?
Or maybe it can influence the other emotions in a way that it wasn't before. Like in another sense, we were kicking out of emotions in order to take dominance. In this particular sense, we can have the love emotion influence fear or anger or sadness to maybe not be the emotions that they were intended to be. They end up being a different kind of emotion, giving us something different than we haven't seen in this franchise so far.
You need to hire Matt. He's on. No bullshit aside. I think you're onto something. I think that is a way to go for Inside Out 3. I agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But with that, let's talk about the box office. I think it's there's no what's the word, shortage, or there's no way denying that this movie was a success, and I don't think anyone was expecting it to be the success that it was. I remember originally reading that this movie was going to do very well, I think it was projected to open anywhere between $80 to $90 million. And then when I saw the numbers on Sunday morning, I was like, holy shit. This movie made $154.2 million in the box office domestically, and it made another, I think total, it was like $292 million internationally opening weekend. Now, at the time of this recording, it is just continuing down that train of right now $176.6 million domestically and another $157.4 million internationally, with a grand total of $334 million worldwide on a budget of $200 million. So I think it's easy to say that this movie's gonna make a profit. As a Pixar fan, I am very excited to see Pixar back on top, because it's been a long road for Pixar since the pandemic. We've had Soul premiere on Disney Plus. We've had Luca and Turning Red also were shelved to Disney Plus. By the time it comes back into theaters, we get Lightyear, and everyone's like, what is that movie? And it did not do well at all. It actually lost a lot of money. And then the year after that, we get Elemental, which Ernesto and I talked about in a previous episode, and we believe that that was a Pixar movie to return to form of what Pixar's values were. It just didn't 100% make the box office financial. It opened poorly, but over time it grew and ended up turning out a profit. And it was almost like the success of the summer for Pixar. And
it was nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars.
It was nominated for Best Animated Feature. And even though Soul did actually win the Academy Award, and Soul was a great movie and a good like staple onto the Pixar's history. It didn't make any money because it was premiered on Disney Plus and didn't have the opportunity to make a financial success. So now that I think a lot of people went to go see Elemental as like, oh, great for kids, not opening weekend worth, but like eventually this movie had the staying power in the theater, and it did end up doing very, very well for themselves there. And now we see a year later coming out with a recognizable IP, a beloved film, and now coming out with a sequel, and everybody, like kids, parents, grandparents, even, I don't know, all came out to the theater to become the highest opening for a film of this year. Like, this is the highest, the biggest opening of 2024, and it's the second biggest opening in Pixar's history, right behind Incredibles 2, which opened to 182 million. So with all of that, TJ, I toss it over to you. How do you feel like this helps Pixar's success? You know, was this warranted? Was it needed? And do you think they can retain that moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I think it was definitely warranted. I think this film definitely speaks for itself. I think it's worth the price of admission. I think it was needed on Pixar's end. They needed a huge win. They needed momentum back, right? I think a lot of the viewers and a lot of the fan base, I think, was cautious for a period of time with Pixar. And I think this kind of puts them back into the seats. I think this kind of shows them, okay, like here is a property that we know well and we loved the first time around. And you know what? They took care of it and we love it again. And I think Pixar can use this momentum and move forward and really kind of set their flag back into this war of films and say like, hey, we haven't lost it. We are back on top. We are creative as ever, and we can bring characters to fans all over that are complex but easy to understand.
Ernesto, what about you?
I mean, it was an amazing film. I think it did exactly what it set out to do. And just comparatively, I wanted to look at Inside Out 1. Inside Out 1 on its opening made 90 million and domestically ended worldwide at 857 million. And then Inside Out 2, look, I mean, 154 million opening. So I think it's safe to say that this one is at least on track to outperform the first one, 100%.
Yeah.
So, I think it's amazing. I think this is great news. I think we've been kind of down on Disney lately, like all their projects lately. How did we kind of discussed at length already? Just a lot of misses. So it was refreshing that this was not only a hit, but that it was like it gave you the feeling of like Pixar the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to just quickly also, I was doing some digging, and Lightyear cost $200 million to make, and it ended up only making $226.4 million worldwide, taking a huge loss on that. I think it easily like over $100 million of a loss on Lightyear, and for many reasons, for whatever reason, the people did not want to go to the theater to go watch that movie, and that was like the first time that Pixar was able to go into the theater and present themselves, and was like, well, maybe people don't want to go back to the theater. And then a year later, we get Elemental, which opened to $29 million, which is very, very like concerning. But then ultimately, it ended up making $496 million worldwide, making a profit off of a $200 million budget. So it ended up doing really well for itself. And I feel like in some ways, getting the Oscar nom and getting like the staying power that it did, and even probably doing well on Disney Plus, it was like the small, like it got ignited. It was just what it needed at the time for Elemental to be, and also for Pixar to give us a really good original story to then propel Inside Out 2 to be like, all right, now this is Pixar's return to form here. And I do think that they played it safe by giving us a very similar story that knows that works, but also not using that to its disadvantage to give us something that we've already seen, but give us something that worked well with the story, would also similar, and then attracted a bunch of people to come and see it. And I think this also further goes down to what Disney has been wanting was to rely on their IPs to give them back huge returns in the box office. So I think that with not a lot of movies coming out this summer that kind of compares to Inside Out 2, we have a lot of the big budgets again. We have, like in like 2 weeks we have like A Quiet Place, and then Twisters and Deadpool and Wolverine, but like none of those are meant for families. So not all of them anyway. And so I feel like Inside Out 2 has a good staying power to like kind of dominate the box office because it's the only film in the game right now. And Garfield the movie is kind of already losing its steam. So this is a great avenue for kids and families to go watch. And so I think it's going to make a monster profit. And what I'm curious about is if this is the movie that's going to hit $1 billion, because as far as a very concerning weekend, like summer blockbuster season, that they're already touting the $9 mark this year, if not any. And so I'm curious if Inside Out 2 can be one of the few movies this year to actually hit the $1 billion mark, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, only 2 movies last year got to $1 billion, and that was Barbie and Super Mario Bros. And I think the only movies this year that actually has a chance, from what I've been reading, was Inside Out, Wolverine, maybe Moana 2, depending how that works out, and Wicked has all decent chances of hitting $1 billion this year. So I guess time will tell. But with all of that, TJ, we'll go back to you, your final thoughts on the film, as well as your 5-star rating.
Yeah, I think, once again, I thought this was a return to form for Pixar. I absolutely loved Inside Out 2. I think it's great for the whole family. And, I do think that this film does hit $1 billion. I think it's got that staying power. I think families are going to go out to see it. I think you're going to have a lot of people who go multiple times to go see it. And so I think that's going to contribute to it. And if I was going to give it a star rating out of 5, I'd probably give it, I want to say 4.5. Like, I don't want to give it a 5 out of 5. Like, I think it can warrant it, but I just think it's right there. Like, I think it's great. It just, I will go 4.5.
Ernesto?
Kind of what I've been saying before. We've kind of been reiterating. It's amazing. It's an incredible film. I will be one of those people to hopefully go see it again. If not, I will 100% be rewatching once it hits Disney Plus. It'll be one, I think, that we would even add to the physical collection. That's a big thing for me. If it's good enough for me to consider buying a physical copy of it, that's pretty high up there on my book. But it's great. I actually think it's better than the first one. I think it expands on the lore and kind of the world of Inside Out. It does it in a very effective way. But yeah, I'm here for it. So if I'm gonna give it 4.5, only because I know it's not a perfect 5, but I feel like it's more than 4.5. So I'm gonna go like 4.75, man. No, I know we can only go half, so it's gonna be 4.5. But if we could give it a 4.75, that's where it would be 4 3/4 of the almost the whole 5th star, but not quite. It's like one little triangle missing from that.
One little triangle missing. No, I agree with you both. I think it fits very nicely in a 4.5 stars. This was a great movie, a great sequel, expanding on what made the original so good and just propelling it into the new emotions. The new emotions really helped this movie turn what it is. And I think also part of it is just so relatable in so many different ways, with family and kids alike. And it picks up exactly where it needed to, going off the first movie. And I think it played with literally all these emotions so well. And by the end of it, we get like this new perspective on how we feel about ourselves, this new sense of self, that we are the good and the bad. That's who we are. We try to learn from their mistakes. And at the end of the day, we just, hopefully anyway, we all try to be good people. And sometimes we make mistakes along the way, but I think this movie does a really good job of explaining that. And I think for me, I think it fits very nicely into the 4.5 slot, because I don't think it hits the perfect 5, just because I do feel like that it did kind of lean on a safe bet of with these emotions, and so there wasn't much of a surprise for me on certain story beats that they could have followed. And so there was that. Also, in the same way, it didn't make me cry as much as it did the first one. That shouldn't be much of a barometer, but it is for me. Like, I go into Pixar movies with, hoping that it might shed a tear because it got filled with an emotion. And this one, it didn't really do that, but it definitely hit on, even though it didn't make me cry, it definitely hit on an emotional level because there's a lot of relatability to what they were expressing. But yeah, otherwise, I think this was a great movie. Definitely a good movie for Pixar to come back in. And also, I mean, the next movie that comes out from Pixar got pushed back to the summer of 2025, and it's called Elio. And
it's set to release June 13th of 2025. Directed by Adrian Molina. Let's see. For centuries, people have called out to the universe looking for answers. In Disney and Pixar's all-new movie Elio, the universe calls back. The original feature film includes Elio, an underdog with an active imagination who finds himself inadvertently beamed up to the Commonverse, an interplanetary organization with representatives from galaxies far and wide, mistakenly identified as Earth's ambassador to the rest of the universe, and completely unprepared for that kind of pressure, Elio must form new bonds with eccentric alien life forms, survive a series of formidable trials, and somehow discover who he is truly meant to be. I don't know. We'll see. It's the only thing they have listed coming out next. That's their next main project.
Yeah, I don't know about this one. Like I saw that because this movie was supposed to come out this year, if I'm not mistaken, and they put out a trailer for it, and they pushed it back for a reason, and I want to say that they pushed it back because they weren't agreeing on the story of it all, and it definitely, when I first saw that trailer, I was like, that's not Pixar. That doesn't seem like a Pixar movie to me.
Like, when I think Pixar, I think of them telling this animated story, but still managing to tell us about ourselves as human beings, like, and how we deal with different things in our lives. Like, that's where it does well. Toy Story, WALL-E, The Incredibles, like obviously Inside Out. Like, all these things have themes that we can relate to ourselves individually. I mean, I haven't seen much about this one, so I mean, I could be wrong, but that's Pixar's next project. I don't think it'll be Inside Out 2, but hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah, and it's also Adrian Molina. He was also the co-director of
That
Coco.
does help. That does help a little bit.
Does help. He also wrote the screenplay for Coco, and he was, he's been the Pixar senior creative team since Toy Story 4. So he's been part of it since Toy Story 4, Turning Red, Lightyear, Elemental, and then also Inside Out 2. So I believe he is making, so he's already directed Coco, co-directed with Pixar before. So there's some legs there. You did Coco. That's
Coco.
A great movie.
It's an amazing. So that means there better be good music in this one.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
I would hope.
One would hope. And so, he is listed as a writer and director for Elio. So we'll see. I always give Pixar the benefit of the doubt because they can surprise you with their original stories. But we know that Toy Story 5 is also in the works, thanks Bob Iger, because he's been pushing that. And I believe it's listed on IMDb, and I did see it was in talks. But Andrew Stanton is expected to come back to direct Toy Story 5, which is a huge get, given that that's one of the original founders of Pixar that gave us Finding Nemo and WALL-E, if I'm not mistaken. So Toy Story 5 is, we'll see where that story goes down, but the jury's out on Elio. We'll have to see a trailer, but I give Pixar the benefit of the doubt regardless. But anyway, that's our spoiler review on Inside Out 2. TJ, you have been a trooper for this entire
guess.
Yes, I feel like he's like, no, we can wrap this up 20 minutes ago.
It's about that time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a pleasure. I definitely enjoyed this conversation. You guys are great to hang with. So
we would love to have you back. To be honest, like you were great. Like anytime we can get you back, that would be great.
Yeah. Just have Matt text me.
Hopefully not on Father's Day.
Oh well, I guess we'll have to wait for to see if the check clears or not.
That's right.
Gotta
consult with his agent.
And then he might consult. He's like, how'd you feel about that one? But yeah, if you want more from us, you can always find us on our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterboxd page at Box Office Binger, and our Instagram and Threads page at _Bingers. The fun continues on all those social media channels. We tell you what's new to streaming every Friday. We do movie show on Mondays. We put your favorite actors and directors and writers and whatever franchises against each other, and you got to pick which one best suits you. TJ, thank you again for just joining us and having it come. I hope your first time on the show was a good one, and we'll love to have you back on.
Yeah, it was everything as advertised, so appreciate it, guys.
Did we lock on a movie for next week?
We did, but we didn't pull the graphic for it. But we are going to be reviewing Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie, post his big win off of Poor Things at the Oscars last year, Kinds of Kindness. That's going to have Emma Stone. It's going to have Jesse Plemons, who just came off Civil War. I'm excited. Two of my favorite. I think also William Dafoe is also in this one as well, coming back with Yorgos.
Yeah.
And Emma Stone working with him again. So I'm actually, his movies are kind of weird, but I like his weird. So I'm very intrigued to watch this one. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it definitely.
Jesse Plemons also won Best Actor at Cannes for his performance in Kinds of Kindness. So I am really excited to see him in that. I mean, he's like amazing in everything he does. Like literally everything he touches is great. So I'm excited to check it out.
So you got to look forward to that next week. Again, TJ, thank you for joining us. Hopefully we can see you again soon. And that's all the show we have for you guys for this week. Come back next week for more movie fun. You're not going to regret it. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Ernesto Santos. See ya.